Recording in progress.
Through the Vice Chair, we're ready to begin.
Thank you. Welcome to this regular meeting of the Planning Commission this Tuesday evening, June 23rd. I now call this meeting to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Aleva, could you please call the roll?
Vice Chair Clafter,
Present.
Commissioner Bush,
Present.
Commissioner Shumkel, and Commissioner Williams.
Present.
Good evening and welcome. We are excited to be here in person with options for virtual participation. Thank you for your cooperation and for helping us to maintain an efficient and accessible meeting environment. There are several ways to participate. For those attending in person, please complete a yellow request to speak slip and hand it to the clerk. If you are participating remotely, please use the raise your hand feature in Zoom and you will be called upon at the appropriate time. If calling in via phone, press 9 to raise your hand, and when called upon, press 6 to unmute. These options for public comment will remain available until we close public comment period for each item. For members of the public watching on YouTube who wish to provide live public comment, please note that you must join the meeting through the Zoom webinar using the access information listed on the agenda. Our first item on the agenda is public comment. Members of the public wishing to comment on any item not appearing on the agenda may address the Planning Commission at this time. State law prevents Planning Commission from taking action on any matter not on the agenda. Your comments may be referred to staff for follow-up. This public comment section is generally limited to a total of 15 minutes. However, that is subject to our discretion and can be extended if we wish to do so. If needed, an opportunity for additional public comment may also be provided later in the agenda. If you are in the chambers and wish to speak to an item not on the agenda, please submit your yellow speaker slip to staff now. If you're online and wish to speak, please raise your hand now. Leva, do we have any requests to speak?
Through the Chair, there are no public commenters.
Thank you. Then I will close general public comment. Our next item is item 1, 678 Concar Drive, vesting tentative map for new mixed-use development, PA 2025-0-064. We will start with a staff presentation and applicant presentation, followed by public comments. Members of the public are given 2 to 3 minutes to speak, depending on the number of speakers. Once the public hearing is closed, the chair will ask for staff to respond to any public comments. The commission will ask clarifying questions, deliberate, and render a decision. If a decision is made tonight, the decision of the Planning Commission can be appealed to the City Council within 10 calendar days.
Ready?
Ready for the presentation? Yes, please.
Good evening, Vice Chair and Commissioners. I'm Steve Golden, Principal Planner with the Community Development Department, with a staff presentation. And as the Vice Chair stated, this project is for the vesting tentative map for the Concar Passage project, planning application number 2025-064. So I will start with a background of the project. The project site is located on the south side of Concar Drive, north of Highway 92, and in between South Delaware Street to the west and South Grand Street to the east. The total project area is 14.5 acres. A quarter mile away to the west is the Hayward Park Caltrain station. And then directly north of the site is a single family neighborhood and the Concar playground or public park there. And then to the west is 4-story office buildings and the 5-story Station Park Green mixed-use development project. And that's west across Delaware Street, South Delaware. And to the east is 1 and 5-story, 1 and 10-story commercial office buildings across South Grand Street. This is just a 3D aerial view of the project site and the surrounding neighborhood, including the surrounding commercial and single-family neighborhood, as I described previously. Again, in this area, there's some new development projects, new residential development projects, including that Station Park Green to the west, northwest of the site with 595 units. To the northeast is the Bayshore Commons, which was approved recently with 256 units. And then kitty corner to the northeast is a new project at 1770 South Amphlett Boulevard, otherwise known as the old Marriott site. We have a preliminary application for a residential project there. It has proposed 234 units on 10 acres. They'll likely need to make some modifications to bump it up to 300 units, but that's going to come later. So this is, again, just kind of a perspective of the site. Just to give you a little history of this site, as some of the commissioners know, there was a previous project that was approved at this site in August of 2020. There was an extension in August of 2023, but that project expired last year, September 30th of last year. There was also a development agreement for that project, but that was never executed. So this slide just has some kind of rough comparisons of the previous project to the project that's now being proposed, with the previous project having 961 units and the existing, or the proposed project, at 847 units. And you can see some of the other details of the project comparison there. So this project is under SB 330. There was a preliminary application filed or submitted February 14th, 2025, and that locked in the local standards, policies, and fees that can be applied to the project. And the applicant held an information meeting to the neighborhood on July 31st of 2025. Then the applicant filed a formal planning application August 1st of 2025, and that included the site plan and architectural review application, the site development planning application, and a vesting tentative map. So I'm just going to describe the whole project just sort of as background, because what you're going to be approving tonight is a component of the entire project, but just to sort of set the table of what the project is. Again, you're looking at the vesting tentative map, but this project is 847 residential units, which is 59 units per acre. There's 139 for sale. Sorry, there's a little typo in there. 3-story townhouse units, and 708 rental units in 3 apartment style buildings. 186 affordable units, which is 22% of the residential units, 37 very low income, and 149 low income units. They will be constructing a new commercial building that's 3,100 square feet that will relocate the existing 7-Eleven, and the applicant is preserving the existing Trader Joe's. And so there will be a total of 14,500 square feet between those 2 buildings. They're proposing about 2.3 acres of open space, and that includes open courtyards in the apartment buildings. And again, before you tonight is the vesting tentative map, which is going to create 26 lots for the whole project. So this is the site plan showing you where the proposed commercial 3,100 square foot building on the northeast, along with the existing Trader Joe's. The 3 apartment style buildings are to the southern part of the site along Highway 92. And then the 139 townhouse units are primarily in the northwest portion of the site. And the green represents sort of those paseos, common areas, and there's a smaller sort of pocket park on Concar Drive. I should also note down by the south of the apartment buildings, there's also outdoor amenities for the residents there as well, including a community garden, I believe a dog run, and some other amenities for the residents. Just again, giving you some perspective of the entire project. This is just showing the apartment style building along with the townhouse building. This is the townhouse. This is from sort of the Concar Drive, showing that pocket park amongst the townhouse units. Okay, so this is a rather unique project for the city. It is considered a by right project, and this by right designation comes out of housing element law, and under state law, it says that if a non-vacant site is used in 2 or more consecutive housing elements, and the site wasn't developed with housing, then the city needs to rezone the site to accommodate a certain amount of density, and residential uses are allowed by right. So this particular site was in the housing sites inventory for the 5th and 6th housing element cycles. And therefore we rezone the site with this H overlay district, which is called our Housing Opportunities Overlay District. And within that district, you become by right, you're an eligible by right project if you propose a minimum density of 30 units per acre. So there are 59 units per acre. So that makes them eligible under that that requirement. And then also at least 20% of the units are affordable to low income. So they've proposed 22% to very low or low income. So it qualifies under state law and under our H, or Housing Opportunities Overlay District, as a by right project. Also under those rules and under state law, the site plan and architectural review and the site development planning application are subject to a ministerial approval by the zoning administrator, and they're not considered a project under CEQA. However, the vesting tentative map is subject to subdivision rules under state law and our local implementation of state law. So this kind of sets up why the project before you, we're looking at just the vesting tentative map of the site. So with that in mind, we just to kind of just disclose how this project has proceeded. The city took action on the site plan and architectural review for the project and the site development plan application through a zoning administrator approval, which occurred on June 9th. And the item before you tonight is the vesting tentative map, which all it does, I shouldn't say all it does, but it creates the 26 lots for development. It parcelizes the private streets and public access easements for the common space and recreation areas. And it provides dedications and easements for the frontage improvements that the project is required to complete. So that bottom portion, just the vesting tentative map, is what you're looking at tonight. So hard to read, but this mess is essentially the vesting tentative map, along with the other components that make it up. But this is what's in the the agenda report, the vesting tentative map. You do have to make a findings as part of the tentative map approval. You do need to make findings that it's consistent with the general plan. So this site is in the mixed use medium 2 designation, which allows up to 99 units per acre. The mixed use medium 2 district, the general plan notes that this designation allows medium density mixed use buildings that provide a mix of commercial, office, and or residential uses within the same building, within the same site or building, and again allows up to the 99 units, 99 units per acre. So since the project is residential and has a density up of 59 units, it's in conformance with the general plan. With regards to zoning, it's the zoning is TOD, or transit-oriented development. The site is within the San Mateo Rail Corridor TOD specific plan area, and specifically in that specific plan, it's in the Hayward Park Station TOD overlay zone, and it's called out as Area 2. And within Area 2, they do allow redevelopment as a mixed use or a site predominantly multifamily residential use. And the specific plan notes that uses may include neighborhood or community serving ground floor retail uses. So therefore, this project is consistent with the zoning and the specific plan. Just to note, the project, because the whole project is considered a residential development project, the Housing Crisis Act, or Senate Bill 330, applies because they submitted their preliminary application. The project vests certain development standards and fees. Also, the Housing Accountability Act applies to the project, which limits the local agency's ability to deny, reduce the density, or render a housing development project infeasible if objective standards are met. With regards to development fees that the project will pay, the park, and I'm just providing this again more for background, the park in lieu fee does apply to the map because it's a fee that's in lieu of parkland dedication. So the applicant will be paying approximately $17 million for the park in lieu fees. There are other fees that apply. The child care development fee, almost $3 million for that fee. Wastewater capacity charge, $6.8 million. The school district will collect fees at $4.94 per square foot of residential. And the public art fee will apply to the project, which is 1.19% of the total construction cost. One thing that you might see on other projects is the transportation impact fee. For this project, they get credit for the existing development, the Concar shopping center. So that fee, there is no fee for that will collect for that. With regards to CEQA, this project is exempt under AB 130, Public Resources Code 21080.66. We did send a formal notice under the state statute. We're required to send out a formal notice to Native American tribes for consultation. We did not receive a response from any tribe within 60 days. So that consultation was considered concluded with no additional conditions that a tribe could apply to the project. There are specific conditions that are required per the state statute. I've summarized them here. We did send out and include an addendum to the agenda report this afternoon. We realized that we did not apply these conditions in the list that was included in the AR. This is a summary of the formal conditions. They're summarized on this slide. In addition, we discuss with the applicant condition number 17, which is the below market rate agreement or the housing agreement. We agreed with the applicant that we would recommend to remove this condition and add a new condition, which is on the slide. And that was also included in the addendum that was sent out. Okay, so with that, the staff recommends to adopt a resolution to approve the vesting tentative map for the site at I won't read off all the addresses, but for the site for the development of a new commercial residential development project, and find that the project is exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act pursuant to Public Resources Code section 21080.66, based on the findings for approval and subject to the conditions of approval, and noting that we recommend to include the additional conditions of approval pursuant to AB 130, and also the removal of condition 17 and adding the new condition for the BMR housing agreement. So with that, I'll conclude, and I can answer any questions you might have. And I also have a representative from Public Works if you have any specific questions for them.
Thank you. Do we have a presentation from the applicant? Yes, please. Yep, please come to.
Thank you. I filled one of these out if you wanted to take that from me. Thank you. Of course, yes. Good evening, Vice Chair Clafter and members of the Commission and city staff. First, I would like to thank city staff, actually my name is Lisa Borba, and I am the project manager with Brookfield Residential and the project manager for the Passage project. First, I would like to thank city staff for their professionalism and collaborative approach throughout this process. I'd like to thank the zoning administrator for approving the project site plan and architectural review and the site development planning application earlier this month, and the Planning Commission now today for considering this vesting tentative map. Tonight's action represents the final approval associated with the Passage project and an important milestone as we move towards construction. I would also like to acknowledge the city's leadership in establishing the Housing Opportunity Overlay District. This site is one of the properties that's benefiting from that forward-thinking policy framework, which has allowed housing to move through a more predictable and efficient review process while helping to address a very critical housing need in San Mateo. Passage will deliver 847 units, including new homes, including 186 affordable homes, as staff has outlined already, which is approximately 22% of the total units, providing more affordable housing than required in San Mateo. The state and the city have created this streamlined pathway for housing projects like Passage, and although the project is not required to pay the TIF fee, Brookfield remains committed to investing in improvements that extend beyond what is required. One example is the significant bicycle and pedestrian improvements surrounding the site. These improvements are not required, but we believe that they are important investments that will improve the safety, the connectivity, and the access within this transit-oriented area. They are the result of a very thoughtful partnership between city staff and the project team, and reflect our shared goals for creating a well-connected neighborhood that benefits both future residents and the broader community. So with me tonight is Angelo Obertello and Nagina Ayar, our civil engineers, who prepared the vesting tentative map before you. Also available is Lauren Alexander with the Pacific Companies, and she is our affordable housing partner, and she is attending remotely. Joining me as well are Kohar Kojayan, who has helped guide the entitlement process, and our legal counsel, Rob Tabawada. I'm really sorry about that. I've been saying it wrong for like the longest time. Anyways, we agree with staff's recommendation and are here to answer any questions. Assuming approval this evening, we will continue advancing construction documents through the summer with initial submittals anticipated this fall. We look forward to continuing our partnership with the city as we move towards construction in 2027. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we have an opportunity for public comment on this agenda item. If you are in chambers and wish to speak on this item, please submit your yellow speaker slip to staff now. If you are online and wish to speak on this item, please raise your hand now.
Through the chair, we have one request to speak in person.
Thank you. You can proceed.
Rich, you may come to the podium. You'll have 3 minutes to speak.
Been watching this project, I think, for not 8 or 9 years now. I was instrumental in helping to get it through Planning Commission, City Council for the previous builder. I want to tell you that I was surprised that this is only 59 units per acre. Do you realize that's only 9 units more per acre that measure H, P, and Y had before we overturned it with measure T? That's interesting. I think we could have had some more units there, which would help with our housing inventory, but it is what it is, and I like the project. Just want to give you a little history. How old do you think the shopping center is? It's at least, if not older than 80 years. What used to be there before is I threw freight at an Albertsons store where the Ross's is right now in 1970 through 1974. Across the street where the office buildings are was a Whitefront. Anybody here heard of Whitefront? Whitefront was a store, the smaller in size than a super Walmart, was on the same plan as Super Walmart. There were many of them in the Bay Area. That went away when the office buildings were built. And so I think it's time to use this shopping center for a more useful use. Obviously, its time is gone. Next door to the Albertsons store where Rite Aid was a Payless Drug. Anybody heard of Payless Drug? It's long gone. And the center should be long gone as is. And it should be housing. And hopefully it'll get built while I'm still around to view it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Through the vice chair, those are all of our public commenters.
I will close public comment on this item. Move to questions. Do we have any questions from our commissioners for the applicant or for staff?
I do. I have a few questions. Let's see. It was noted that that there will be a public art in lieu fee. Will the project, does that mean the project will not have any public art, or does that mean that that's just a potential fee?
Through the vice chair, the applicant has a choice of providing the public art or paying the fee. We haven't seen any public art yet. It doesn't preclude them from proposing some sort of public art that either is up to or exceeds the fee, or the 1.19% valuation, or they could pay have an art project and pay a balance and a fee as well. So that'd be up to the applicant as far as moving through the process, what they want to do.
Can I ask the applicant if that's in the works or, in the plans?
I would agree with staff with that. The decision hasn't been made yet about the in lieu fee or providing art. But as I understand the program, it remains a choice. So,
Okay. All right. Thanks.
thank you.
Let's see. The other question I have is regarding the proximity to the freeway. And also now I didn't realize, but there's, in addition to windows, there's also a community garden adjacent to the freeway. So the distance from the building to the property line appeared to be about 30 feet. What's the distance from the building to Highway 92? It's like, it looked like when I scaled it, it looked like it was about 100 feet or something, not the 500 feet that the general plan talked about.
Through the vice chair, I mean, I'm kind of looking, just eyeballing on the plans to the embankment or up the embankment. It's, yeah, maybe 120 feet to the edge of the property, and then another 40 feet to the building or so.
Okay. So more than the 100 feet that I was roughing out, but less than the 500 feet that our general plan requires for a new building, new residential projects to be from a freeway. The other question, let me just see. The other question I had was, I guess it's actually not that important. I think it actually resolved itself. Thank you. That's all I have.
No questions there. I don't think I have any questions. So maybe just to give some opportunity to people for comments. Do I see any comments? No comments there? Comments?
Okay, well, maybe I'll just make a few comments. Yeah, thanks for the presentation. And I was on the planning commission when we saw this previous iteration of, a project at this site, and it's very, very different project now. So, there were many amenities there that are no longer here. But having said that, I understand that there's many positives, such as the 22% of the units being affordable. So I would say that's the, kind of biggest positive. But I will just, kind of comment on the couple things that I was questioning. I feel like we're setting a precedent. In fact, we already did with a previous project this year, that it's okay to just, I understand there's mechanical systems in place and solutions in place, but, we've set a precedent now that we can build within 500 feet of the freeway. And that was a really big, point of discussion amongst the planning commission when we were going through the general plan and housing element. We deemed it a health concern. So I personally feel like there's other ways it could have been designed to create, all of the, well, maybe not all of them, but to create a better, face forward view or face exposure to the north as opposed to the south. So I feel that that's a little bit disappointing. But compromises would have had to be made in order to make that work. I think the other item that I was going to question about and talk about was the fact that the affordable housing units are all in a separate building. But in this design, in the previous project, actually, it was, I really disliked it because there was all this different amenities and kinds of things, and then there was this affordable housing building that was very different than all the others. In this design, that's not the case. So the three large buildings are all basically the same. And so if one of them has a different rent than the other one, that's probably doesn't matter. They're all very similar in terms of their amenities and such, hopefully. The only other comment I would say is just that it's a positive that these are, for sale townhomes in the project as well, to kind of help with this missing middle that we talk about, in terms of housing and the ability to buy a house or buy a residence. And I would love it to have been a little bit more weighted towards that. But anyway, so those are my comments. And I think, it's really exciting to see the project move forward in even if it's not exactly the way I was anticipating, because, it's just sitting there waiting for somebody to do something with it. So those are my comments.
Great. I have just a couple comments myself. I would echo somewhat what Commissioner Williams said about, kind of the potential of the site, looking at the site over many years. When I think about the scale of the site, the proximity to Hayward Park Station, thinking about the scale, how it's sort of roughly equidistant between the kind of the retail we have downtown and then over at Bay Meadows. I sort of get these grand visions in my head of what could have been there. But with that said, I'm also really excited to see something moving forward here. We heard during public comment about the long history of the site as a giant parking lot and shopping spot. I mean, I think the most exciting thing that I remember on that site happening ever in my lifetime was when the Trader Joe's opened. And that was a long time ago. And of course, that area has seen a lot of change. Going down Delaware there and Concar, that intersection, there used to be there was the bowling alley across the street, and that closed and was abandoned empty for a long time. And then there was, the Kmart and the gas station, all these other things. And now we have this, Station Park Green, office is there. And so this site has been waiting to transform along with the rest of that there. So I think it will be great when that project is finally completed and we have this entirely different atmosphere there. And I don't think anyone is going to mourn the loss of the existing condition other than maybe the seagulls and the pigeons who call that parking lot home most of the time. So those are my comments.
Can we see the... I move to accept the staff's recommendation as reflected in 1, 2, and 3 on the screen.
And adopt the resolution.
And adopt the resolution with the amendments.
I will second that.
Aleva, could you call the vote?
Commissioner Bush? Yes. Commissioner Williams?
Yes.
And Vice Chair Clafter?
Yes.
Motion passes 3-0.
Thank you. We good to
I will
move?
say it's nice that the Trader Joe's is not there. I should have added that.
Oh, yeah.
Say it.
I said I'm pleased that the Trader Joe's is not moving.
Oh, yeah. Is it staying open?
Do we need to take a break, or are we ready to go right into the next?
Staying open during construction?
No, we don't need to take breaks.
Okay. Next item on our agenda, item 2, high-density mixed-use and multifamily districts and zoning code cleanups, code amendments. We will start with a staff presentation, followed by public comment. Members of the public are given 2 to 3 minutes to speak, depending on the number of speakers. Once the hearing is closed, you may ask questions and clarifying comments, and we will deliberate and render a decision. If this decision is made on this tonight, the decision of the Planning Commission can be appealed to the City Council within 10 calendar days. And we will just wait for staff to be ready.
I must admit, we must have had a presentation by her in the past. Have we had a presentation by this point?
I don't know.
Yeah. Maybe not then, yeah. Yeah, but I was just realizing, I'm like, oh, she sort of seems familiar, but I don't know. Still didn't do anything to it.
Okay. All right. Good evening, Planning Commission and community members. I'm Shelby Donahoe, Senior Planner with the Community Development Department. I will be providing a presentation on the item before you tonight to consider the creation of 4 new zoning districts and additional various updates to several sections of the San Mateo Municipal Code. Here is a quick overview of what this presentation will cover. I'll begin with a quick background on our general plan and comprehensive zoning code update, then discuss the newly proposed districts, followed by the additional code updates. Finally, I will end with a recommended action on this item before Planning Commission tonight. Starting with some background on the general plan and zoning code update, in 2024, the City Council adopted the Strive San Mateo General Plan 2040. This plan is a strategic document guiding the city's long-range growth and development through policy. While the general plan provides that high-level policy direction and outlines overall development intensity, the city's zoning regulations serve as the primary implementation mechanism by translating these policies into clear and enforceable development standards. The existing zoning regulations do not fully align or adequately implement the land use designations and development patterns envisioned by the general plan, and the city is currently undertaking a comprehensive update of the zoning code. Staff anticipates this will be completed by mid-2027. While the new zoning code update is underway, it is necessary to establish new zoning districts and make minor code updates to align with the general plan's higher density adopted land use designations. The creation of these districts will not result in the automatic rezoning of any parcels, and rezoning of any properties to these new districts will need to take place through a separate developer or city-initiated process. These rezonings may take place through the zoning code update or in advance of this update through the entitlement process for individual projects. Prior to any rezoning, staff and applicants may utilize these standards to better understand development expectations, building form, and help ensure that projects are consistent with the general plan. As previously discussed, the proposed zone districts are intended to correlate with 4 general plan land use designations that allow for higher density residential and mixed use development. The proposed R6 district will implement the residential medium 2 designation. The R7 district will implement the residential high designation. The MU3 district will implement the mixed use medium 2 designation, and the MU4 district will implement the mixed use high designation. We can now discuss the proposed standards within these districts in greater detail. The R6 district is intended to accommodate higher density multifamily uses, particularly along major corridors near mixed-use employment and commercial areas. The development standards have been outlined in the table on this slide, with a maximum density of 99 dwelling units per acre, consistent with the general plan, maximum height of 6 stories or 75 feet, and a 5-foot rear yard setback. Additional buffers have been provided for rear and side yards adjacent to single-family districts. The R7 district is designed to accommodate the city's highest density residential development in locations with the greatest access to transit, services, employment centers, and commercial uses. The development standards for this district include a maximum density of 130 dwelling units per acre, a height of 8 stories or 100 feet, a 5-foot rear yard setback, and buffers from low-density residential consistent with the previous district. The mixed-use 3 district the MU3 district will provide opportunities for medium-density mixed-use development that promotes walkability and commercial opportunity. This district permits a broad range of uses, including but not limited to retail shops, restaurants, personal services, offices, medical and dental clinics, hotels, and civic uses. Residential development in this district is permitted through multifamily units with a minimum density requirement. This district will permit densities up to 99 dwelling units per acre, while enforcing minimum densities of 30 to 50 dwelling units per acre dependent on location for mixed-use buildings with a residential component. The floor area ratio will be 4. Maximum height for non-residential buildings will be 4 stories or 50 feet, and a maximum height of buildings with a residential component will be 6 stories or 75 feet. Buildings with a residential component have been granted a greater height allowance to encourage the addition of residential units. Setbacks and buffers will be consistent with the previous districts. The MU4 district permits the same range of commercial, office, institutional, and residential uses allowed in the MU3 district, but at an increased density to support a more concentrated mix of uses. This district will permit a maximum of 130 dwelling units per acre and a minimum of 50 dwelling units per acre for projects with 5 or more units that are mixed use with commercial and residential. The maximum floor area ratio will be 4.5. Heights within this district shall be limited to 5 stories or 65 feet for non-residential buildings and 8 stories or 100 feet for buildings with a residential component. Setbacks and buffer standards shall be consistent with the previous districts. Projects within the proposed districts would be required to provide open space as follows. So they may provide 50 square feet of private usable open space per dwelling unit, such as a balcony, or 75 square feet of common usable open space per unit, such as a pool deck area, or a combination of private and common usable open space with a minimum of 30 square feet of private usable open space per unit. The remaining open space obligation can be met through common usable open space equal to 150% of the remaining private open space requirement. For example, a development that proposes 30 square feet of private open space would then be required to provide an additional 30 square feet of common open space. Now that we've discussed the proposed districts, we can continue the presentation with a discussion of the other amendments included in this ordinance. First, a revision to the landscape ordinance has been proposed to exempt 100% affordable developments from the landscape code requirements and associated in lieu fees. This change is intended to facilitate the development of affordable units and reduce cost burdens on these proposals. Second, related to our site plan and architectural review requirement, the language currently in the code specifying that City Council shall approve of all buildings above 55 feet in height is proposed to be removed, as this conflicts with the standards of the general plan. City Council will be required to review projects that exceed the height requirements in the general plan. Next, the use tables within the commercial districts have been updated to clarify that residential uses shall take place above the first floor. This standard already exists within our C1 district and is intended to ensure commercial spaces continue to be provided throughout the city. Residential code references within non-residential districts have been clarified to ensure applicable standards are applied. Uses previously identified in the C4, CBD, and E2 districts that were unintentionally removed from the code have been reinstated, and temporary construction buildings have been listed as a permitted use with the clarification that the structures must be removed upon completion of construction. Retail standards have been updated to clarify that commercial spaces over 18 feet in height do not count twice as floor area. This will allow for a wider range of design opportunities for commercial users within the city and encourage modern Class A office and commercial spaces that utilize high ceilings as part of their design. Finally, the requirement that businesses within the required retail frontage zones do 50% of sales in person is proposed to be removed to allow for greater flexibility of retail spaces, which aligns with more modern business practices. Many modern businesses have robust online presences, and we want to ensure our code does not discourage them from locating within San Mateo. The proposed ordinance is exempt from the requirements of the California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA, pursuant to Section 21080.17 of the Public Resources Code 15183 of the CEQA Guidelines. CEQA Guidelines Section 15183 provides an exemption for projects that are consistent with a previously adopted general plan, community plan, or zoning ordinance for which an environmental impact report was certified. The proposed zoning code amendments are intended to facilitate development capacity consistent with the general plan and would support the development of additional residential units and non-residential floor area. Staff recommends that the City Council introduce an ordinance to amend the San Mateo Municipal Code, Chapter 27, in various sections, along with the proposed amendment to create 4 new zoning districts and determine that the amendments are exempt from further review under CEQA. And then we did get a public comment right before this meeting that I do want to address. So as a point of clarification in relation to this comment, section 27.53.070 of the red line version should reference permitted non-residential heights as 5 stories or 65 feet for mixed-use high district, and residential building heights of 8 stories or 100 feet. Any other inconsistencies between the red line version and the ordinance will be corrected in advance of the City Council hearing for this item. Thank you.
And then Shelby, I don't know if it would be useful for me to add through the vice chair. There was also an issue that staff identified recently about, like just today, about floor area ratio mentioned in the ordinance, not necessarily being applied the same way that staff have been applying floor area ratio. And so we wanted to get your thoughts on that. Do you have that language, Shelby, of just the existing language that's in the ordinance?
Yeah, so the ordinance has language stating that in the mixed use districts, the floor area ratio shall not apply to residential units. So the discussion point would be if we move forward with that language, or if the floor area ratio should incorporate the residential portion of a building.
Yeah, and through the vice chair, just want to emphasize that this is sort of a point of discussion for you rather than a specific staff recommendation.
Great. What section is that specifically?
Let me take a look.
Yeah, page or in the packet or...
27.52.050 says maximum floor ratio, not the second sentence, so 27.52.
Perfect. And then 27.53.050 as well. So it would apply to both the mixed use districts.
You can search maximum floor area ratio and you'll find it.
Page 53.
We shall discuss.
Thank you for the presentation. I was thinking that it might make sense to proceed as we have in the past.
With public comment?
Oh, sorry, yes, with public comment. Thank you for reminding me. Yes, we will now ask for public comment. If you are in chambers and wish to speak on this item, please submit your yellow speaker slip to staff. If you are online and wish to speak on this item, please raise your hand now.
Through the vice chair, we have one request to speak. That is Steve Carlson. If you'd like to come up to the podium, you'll have 3 minutes.
You said one request to speak? Yes, okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, good evening. Primarily, I think the zoning code amendments are a little bit premature, particularly for the new districts. I seem to have missed the study sessions and public workshops, which focused on the details of the new districts. My concern is that your website identifies it's part of a comprehensive zoning code update. So I'm unclear as to why these are being brought forward separately without in that context. I think that's important if you note that on your own June 9th meeting, you were looking at the R1 through R4, and you give actually quite detailed analysis of how those compare against one another and against other jurisdictions. And that's the kind of analysis I would have liked to have seen in this staff report. The staff report really doesn't have any or little analysis of the implications for the changes, particularly for residential properties that abut these potentially new districts, even though there's no rezoning at this time. For example, there's no supporting documentation for the open space standards, nor any real-world functional analysis. For example, what does a 30-foot square foot balcony accomplish? I think it accomplishes little more than an open storage closet. It's not really functional space. That compares with R3 that we've had for a long time, and that requires 200 square feet for the first bedroom and 100 square feet each bedroom after, on an average for a project, maybe 250 square feet. Whereas this project, or excuse me, ordinance would only propose about 60 to 75. And for some of the areas in the city where there's very sparse open space or recreational areas, that's really important that these luxury buildings provide more open space. Similarly, with regard to setbacks, I think the setbacks are inadequate, and I don't think most people realize that you're actually using a commercial standard, in my opinion, to provide little to no setbacks whatsoever, simply encouraging developers not to have to request waivers. I also have many questions on the mixed-use districts, on how the uses were determined to be appropriate. I find many of the uses proposed in the mixed use to be incompatible with many of the adjacent residential areas, particularly those along San Mateo Drive and Poplar Avenue, which are two-lane roadways. They may be identified as major corridors, but they're very congested now, and I don't think things like motels, hotels, restaurants, clubs, financial services, real estate offices, or emergency shelters are appropriate. That neighborhood already is overloaded with elomosity types of uses. And I think it's inappropriate to eliminate the reference to residential standards in the commercial and executive districts and substitute the objective design standards that were intended to augment the zoning standards, not replace them. I would also note that the proposed changes would directly affect my appeal of a project that came before you earlier this year, 715 North San Mateo Drive, which coincidentally is being scheduled for the same city council hearing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Through the chair, that completes our request to speak.
I will now close public comment on this agenda item. And I will now return to my comment earlier. I was thinking that we might proceed as we have with similar agenda items, where we just sort of go down the list and ask any questions on each item as we have them in the comments. Does that work for everybody? Great. Okay. But perhaps maybe we should start with this additional point which was raised about maximum FAR. Yeah, I was still trying.
56 was, I think, it was 27.5, 3.05.
It's page 22 of the PDF.
Yeah, I'm seeing 27.52.050.
Mm-hmm. There's,
I see it.
oh yeah, sorry, of the, mine are individual PDFs. I'm looking at the red line.
Yes. Yeah, I'm looking. Yeah.
56 of 62.
I don't have a 62-page PDF.
What do you have?
I have 4 PDFs that are all about 10 to 25 pages. Anyways, we're on the same page, but not
So-
actually.
So now this is the existing. This is the existing language of the code, correct?
No, this is proposed new language for new districts.
Okay.
So the red is what's proposed. And so my question is how, I mean, because this is mixed use, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how do you, I don't see how that helps the designer to have to, separate out, separate out no FAR for residential and then calculate the FAR for the rest of it. And is it just to make it easier to build residential? Is that the whole intent?
Not including the residential units in the floor area ratio would potentially facilitate the development of additional units. It would, yeah.
We also have Community Development Director Zach Dahl on the line, who has some more context on this.
We welcome additional context.
Yes, through the vice chair. Yes, I think what we're highlighting here is the general plan is exactly that. It's general, and it looks at two different metrics to measure intensity, allowable intensity in a given land use. And so for residential, it's via density, and for non-residential, it's via FAR. And so I think where we're going here is the zoning code is then much more specific and sets regulations that maybe aren't exactly articulated in the general plan, but implements the intent and consistency with the general plan. And so in this case, the city's current zoning code sets an FAR that includes all floor area for all of our zone districts. And so consistent with that, we're looking at maintaining that same approach in our new districts. And I think the language carried through from the general plan, but that was more to just highlight you're using FAR to quantify your non-residential uses and density to quantify your residential uses. But the intent consistent with our current zoning code is that when we actually put FAR in the zoning code, it would be all inclusive. I think kind of for the point highlighted by Commissioner Williams, which is that it creates awkwardness of if you've got a mixed use building, what's the residential, what's the non-residential? And so the thought here is that for the zoning code purpose, we would have an all-inclusive FAR, and then to make sure that it's calibrated to implement the intensity specified in the general plan.
I'm sorry, but that's confusing to me because it sounds like you're saying that what we're reading is not the way it would be, that it would, that an FAR would, that residential portions of the building would be counted in the FAR.
That's the city's current practice. And so we, as drafted, the FAR section says residential is excluded, but we're highlighting that's inconsistent with the current code. And so we're looking at potentially removing that provision, but we want to get the commission's input on that.
I think my reading of it is that this essentially would say that when it says that FAR would not apply to non-residential, would only apply to non-residential portions of the building. Is that implying then that residential uses above the first floor would be potentially unlimited with this language?
It would just be controlled by density, but not by floor area.
Not by floor. Okay, not by FAR. Yeah.
Traditionally in the city's FAR in all districts there's different carve-outs, mechanical shafts, certain elements, but functionally all usable floor area is controlled by the FAR, and that's a community expectation. And so the thought being that we would continue that approach in the updated zoning code. And so we just flagged this issue that this would be a new approach. So we're curious, we're interested in getting the commission's approach or thoughts on that. But if we were going to stay consistent with our current approach, we would remove that language. And so the FAR would control the full size of the building, residential and non-residential.
Well, excuse me, I just want to say, like, as someone that's like dealt with, like I said last time, I mean, that's what I'm familiar with. And so I'm all for maintaining it the way the industry has typically designed buildings.
You said if we kept the language and it wasn't included in the FAR, then the limitations on the residential portions would be density unit numbers, right? Is that what you said?
Yeah, so it would just be the density, the number
building
of units,
height,
and not the floor area.
Right. And the building height, right? Or is that encompassed in density? When we say
Correct.
density?
Building height as well would be a standard that would be applied.
Okay. Should we discuss our
I
feelings
guess we should
on this one?
discuss, yes.
Before we do, could we go to questions? Because I had a couple sort of related.
Would you like to return to this?
I guess I just had a related question. I made a note that on page 37, if that helps, the daycare centers are not counted in FAR if there's a daycare center in a new mixed-use building. Is that new, or is that part of that's not part of the existing code? That's proposed.
That is part of the existing code. So that was taken from another section of code. So that is a standard that we've already enforced in other districts.
I did not know that.
We could proceed through the agenda report, and then we could return to this new question that we're just discussing after we've had some time maybe to think about it. Does that work for everybody?
Yeah.
Sure. Great. Okay. In that case, why don't we just go ahead and return back for now to the agenda report, and we could start with item 1, which is R6.
I have a couple big picture questions.
Oh, yes, please.
Questions that arose for me during the public comment, which is, can you guys explain again how these particular amendments, how the comprehensive zoning code update does or does not relate to these? So I'm going to state my understanding and then ask whether I've got it right or wrong. We have a new general plan that has these requirements that are not in our zoning code at all. So probably we should have something in there for the next few years while we work on the comprehensive zoning code update. That is what we are doing tonight, with these other couple of little changes. But and here's the, I guess, part. This is the part I'd like confirmation on, assuming what I just said is correct, which is, we will also be considering these in the comprehensive zoning code update such that we can amend these in the next year or two, subject to study sessions, et cetera.
Yes, that's exactly correct. So we want to make sure that in the meantime, we at least have the opportunity for property owners to potentially rezone, if they were interested, to a zone district that matches their land use designation. But these are interim standards. So as part of the zoning code update, we will be revising the code as a whole. So we may make minor tweaks to these standards in the future, but ideally would incorporate these in the zoning code update and move forward with that.
Okay. So everything I said was correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and through the Vice Chair, I think generally the philosophy that we were taking with these is that we were sort of trying to create the most minimal changes that we could to make it as consistent as possible with the general plan, to have those new corresponding zone districts.
And when you say most minimal changes, you mean as compared to comparable districts we already have? Or as compared to
throwing in a whole bunch of new policies, like just sticking as closely to what we needed to get from the general plan.
I see. So basically hitting the minimum requirements that the general plan requires without kind of baking in other things.
Yeah, basically.
And was the goal consistency with how we do it with other districts, to the extent, meaning like, I know obviously these are going to be higher or denser, but like, with respect to things like setbacks, but when you're up against an R1, R2, or with respect to the proportional density as you get higher, those types of questions, like we're trying to stay consistent with how we do it in other districts.
So these districts do have their own unique setbacks, buffers, and those kind of standards proposed. I think what we're saying is those standards already exist in other districts, though they're different. Mm-hmm. So we did propose unique standards for this district specifically to encourage that higher density.
Yeah, okay. And then I think I heard you touch on, but there was a public comment right before the meeting about what does it mean to say that what you just said, that people can opt in to, I'm probably saying it not technically correctly. Let me read the language so that it's precise. Mm-hmm. Creation of these districts, this is from the agenda report, creation of these districts will not result in the automatic rezoning of any existing parcels, and the rezoning of any properties to these new districts will need to take place through a separate developer or city-initiated process. So could you just explain what that means?
Yeah, so we are not going to be changing the zoning of any properties right now. We just want to make sure that these districts exist. So if someone were to want to explore that opportunity, they are able to. But what we can do is when we look at a new project that's coming in, we can kind of take a look at these districts and say, oh, this is how this would compare to this zoning, which implements this land use designation. While that standard legally may not apply, it's something that can help us have a point of reference when we're reviewing a project and working with an applicant.
And the land use, when you say land use designation, that's from the general
Yes.
plan? Okay.
And through the chair, just to add, sorry, Vice Chair. So we, as Shelby's saying, these are really just text changes at this point. We're not bringing any map along with it. We will, however, likely bring some map changes forward in the future, likely before we get to, well, I'll turn it over to somebody who's been working on the map.
So through the Vice Chair, we have been working pretty diligently figuring out, with the adoption of the general plan, where there's inconsistencies with existing zoning, where new zoning districts have to be brought into the map. And so likely we're going to, there's still some work to be done. It might come in phases as far as a map that brings the zoning into conformity with the general plan. We might be proposing some other map amendments, again, consistent with the general plan, because we're finding a lot of inconsistency. The newly adopted general plan in quotes, and with the older zoning map. So that process might move ahead of the comprehensive zoning update, so that we remedy these inconsistencies.
Okay. So
that would be like a broad package of a whole zoning map.
Okay, so
but I just
tell
want,
me if what
we
I
want to be
say
transparent
right now
of,
is correct.
Yes.
These will not apply to any parcels, even once approved by City Council, unless and until we amend the zoning map to include properties that are to which these districts are applicable. That is in the works, but is not going, and may happen before we do the comprehensive zoning code update that then reconsiders these things.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's
Okay.
correct. Unless a project is requesting a zoning amendment, in which case that would be considered on its own as an independent project, a rezone.
Okay, so a project could come in, we pass these, City Council passes these, they come in tomorrow and they say, I would like to be an R6, sorry, what is this entail, R6? Yes, R7. I'd like to be an R7 zoning, and some decision maker in the city, maybe that's us, says, okay, cool, you can do that.
So that would be through the Vice Chair, that would be a zoning amendment, and it would go through Planning Commission recommending to City Council an ordinance to effectively make that change.
Okay, thank you. And when you said, I didn't mean to point at you, Shelby, you said, until then, these are like guides.
Yes.
As we consider how to have particular, maybe I'm saying this wrong, but particular parcels that have a land use designation mirror what we're hoping they'll have standards wise. How does a parcel get the land use designation from the general plan in the first instance?
So those have already been assigned through
Okay.
the general plan process.
Okay, got it. So there is some sort of map that has
Yes,
the land
yes.
use designations, and there's a zoning map. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
We're learning. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Those were my big picture questions. Now I have a much better understanding of kind of what it is we're up to up here.
Through the chair, through the Vice Chair. On a similar note, big picture question would be, what kind of timeline are we talking about? I guess it's not really pertinent, but I'm just curious, like when would this zoning update happen?
Yeah, so we are planning on bringing a draft of the comprehensive zoning code update to Planning Commission for a study session in maybe around March, April of next year, with the thought that it would go to City Council in roughly August.
So are we going to have a study session on that will cover these same things again or no?
That would be.
Yeah, it will cover the entire zoning code, so including these. Oh, over to Zach. Hi, Zach.
Sorry, I mean, like, just to clarify, last time we had this last planning commission meeting, we had a robust study session on R1 through R4. Are we going to have a more robust study session that covers these new districts that we're doing now?
It would cover, it wouldn't be a separate one to cover these zoning districts. It would be one to cover all the comprehensive
Right.
draft.
But so we won't have something directly comparable to what we did last time because it's going to cover everything instead of focusing specifically on these.
Yeah. Zach, did you want to add something?
Yes, through the vice chair, building on what Joanna was saying, we do have a couple more study sessions planned. We are still working exactly what those will be part of, but the big ones will be related to when we publish the comprehensive zoning code update draft. For public review, there'll be a variety of outreach and engagement workshops, and then we'll also be coming to the Planning Commission for discussion, focusing on various items. So it may not be exactly on these topics. We'll have an opportunity to weigh in on them. And that goal is Q1 into Q2 of next year, where the draft will be published, public input, council input. Then following that, we'll then work on preparing the finals, and then we'll be coming back to Planning Commission, and that's probably later in the spring, getting into the summer for public hearings, and that's where you'll be formally making a recommendation to City Council, and then it goes to City Council for adoption. The maps are moving slightly ahead, but the goal is ultimately the maps and the comprehensive zoning code update are adopted at the same time. So that way, any inconsistency, so it's all, because there's a lot of moving parts with the code update and the map changes. And so probably for the cleanest version is it all gets adopted at the same time. So we don't necessarily have a designation that's ahead of maybe other amendments to make it fully consistent. So that's kind of the approximate timeline at this point for how the whole project moves forward.
Okay, thank you. I have a very unfair question, which is what if you had to put a I know the comprehensive zoning code update is to look at our entire zoning code, which is immense, but I gather that part of the reason we had the study session on the R1 through R4 last time was because we want to, one, those are very impactful on people, and we're considering every standard therein. Here, we're creating new districts entirely, so that's pretty meaningful as well. I guess, what's my question? Like, what is this like a significant, the creation of these new districts, is that a not a substantial or not insubstantial portion of what's we're doing with the comprehensive zoning code update? Or is this is this 20% of what we're like trying, like the huge substantive changes we're going to make? Or is this like 2% and there's like so much going on with the CZCU that this will just be like the barest piece of it? I'm just trying to figure out whether these are some substantial changes, and I want to like figure out whether we're actually going to have time in the future through the CZCU process to, make a considered like decision, just like we did with the R1, R4 study session.
To your question, and I think we could take the direction if commission wants to say, hey, we think this is something we would like to discuss more at a study session, we can definitely factor that in, because I think our schedule for the exact topics we bring forward on study session is still open, because I think for exactly this reason, it's such a large project. We wanted to leave space for the topics that deserved further discussion. So if commission says, hey, let's look at this more, we can definitely factor that in. I think in one sense, it's a piece. There's a lot of different aspects to this because it is a comprehensive update. We have a very large, robust code. So this is a piece in one sense. We've been seeing it already because a lot of these new projects that have been coming forward have been building at this intensity. Most of the high density projects we've been seeing so far have been in our mixed use and residential medium 2 and high already. So in one sense, we've already seen projects that are getting developed at approximately this standard. And that was part of the calculus that guided the standards that are before you. But absolutely, if there's commission direction that we should bring this back for a more robust discussion or a focused discussion, we can definitely fold that in moving forward.
Thank you.
So I have some questions about R6. Do we want to kind of move down into through the items now? I did have a question about buffers, the buffers real quick. Just to clarify that those are specifically for when the higher zone parcel is touching the lower parcel?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So not if it's across the street or anything like that?
No, this is designed for directly adjacent.
Okay. And then I had a lot of thoughts about the open space
Okay.
suggestion. I'd like to give the other commissioners an opportunity if they had any questions or comments on that first.
I had a few questions about. I put them all under R6. I don't know if they may apply to others.
That's just where it was, yeah.
Yeah, because I feel like that was just the first one, but it has kind of like a lot of baked in that apply to all of them. But there is so just to make sure my understanding is correct, there's no minimum height requirement in R6 and R7, right?
Correct.
But there is a minimum, some sort of minimum, I don't know if it's height, I think it's density requirement in a mixed use for the number of residential.
Yes, so within the two proposed mixed-use districts, there is a minimum density for the number of residential units within a mixed-use building if you pass 5 units. Okay. So a mixed-use building with commercial and 6 units, they would then trigger that minimum density requirement.
Okay, so in an R6, in these high-density multifamily residential districts, maybe even in existing ones we have, you can build not densely. Like you could build townhomes.
We do require multifamily, but we do not have a minimum density right now. I will say it is something that we're exploring just with some upcoming state laws, SB 79. So it's definitely something that we're looking into, and it's probably something we'll see with the zoning code update. But right now, we are not proposing a minimum density for those districts.
Okay, so you have to have, when you say multifamily, you have to have at least a duplex? Is
Correct.
That what that means? Okay. Okay, the reason I ask is because there's no setbacks suggested except a rear yard setback and buffers, which are essentially setbacks for adjacent to R1 and R2, meaning whether you have 130 dwelling units per acre or you have 2, you have a duplex or you have a high rise, there's no setback requirement.
Correct, just the 5-foot rear yard setback or the buffer from adjacent single family or R2.
Okay.
Through the chair, Vice Chair. However, there's still going to be, California building code requirements for,
Correct.
If you build to your property line, you can't have windows, or they have to be fire rated windows, which are prohibitive. There are other factors that are going to bring the design to fruition.
That's correct. And we also have objective design standards as well that will also be applicable to any of these projects. So those do have some sort of step backs and things like that that can affect design and give a little bit more privacy in certain situations.
For the R4 and R5, which are is it correct to say those are the current
Yes.
most dense?
Yeah.
Do those have setbacks?
Yes.
Okay. And are what are they, like 10 and 15, like the proposed buffers, or?
No, they are larger than that. They generally refer to previous R districts, which our code does frequently. So I think both of those districts refer to the standards within R3, which has a variety of setbacks based on how tall the building is, if it's adjacent to the single family's rear property line or side property line. I think the highest setback in one of those districts would be like side property line to side property line, which is half of the building height, which for many projects has been, yes.
Yeah, I remember hearing about that at our
Yes.
study session
Yeah.
for the R4. And that's like kind of just it's sort of, that seems strange to have 0 setbacks. But it also is, to the extent, like we were talking, you weren't here, but we were talking about missing middle in the last study session, and to have these more restrictive setbacks keeps you from building some of the lower density on these types of parcels because you're not able to have as much space and for reasons it seems like you're nodding along. But that's kind of why I'm asking those questions in combination, is just like, this seems unusual to have 0 setbacks, particularly when the state law is going to allow you to waive the setbacks, in the particular circumstances that we all know that state law does. Okay, well, that was my question about setbacks.
Through the vice chair, just on setbacks, having 0 front setbacks is more common in sort of high density areas that's sort of a more urban feel, where you often want to bring the buildings up to the sidewalk. So it's more likely in those higher density areas.
Okay, that's helpful. And I mean, is that where we would expect to see the R7, R6 and R7
Yeah.
zoning? Okay,
Yeah.
that's helpful. Thank you.
Well, I have a bunch of comments on this open space thing. Does anybody else to talk about the open space? Do you have any questions about that?
No. I think,
I mean,
go ahead. I mean, I have comments on it too, but yeah, go ahead.
yeah. So, just wanted to get the big question. So, what would count as open space? Because it just says open space, and I just want to make sure I'm absolutely clear on what we're talking about.
Yeah, so our code already has a definition of usable open space, so that's what we would reference. So generally, it's for a multifamily project, it would be things like a balcony or an at-grade patio area. For common open space, it's usually any communal gathering space that's outdoors. So like I mentioned, like a pool deck or I think like a dog park, things like that. So, but we do have a definition in our code that helps us enforce that standard.
Yeah. And then obviously, so like for a patio at ground level, I think that probably would not count against FAR, potentially.
We do have definitions of FAR
Yes.
in our code as well. They are different between a single family residence and any other type of building. And I do believe that patios and balconies are exempt from FAR for anything outside of R1.
Okay, because when I was looking, it wasn't clear to me that whether enclosed balconies count against FAR.
Fully enclosed,
Well, if you have like 3 sides.
if it's still considered a balcony, it would likely not be FAR. I'd have to double check our floor area ratio requirements, but generally outside of the R1 district, balconies are not considered floor area.
I'm gonna double check that. You can.
Sometimes aren't there requirements like if it extends a certain percentage out beyond the face of the building, then it counts as a balcony and it's not an FAR. But if the railing went, in line with the building, it would be covered entirely and it would count, I think. But I don't know if that's changed, but that's how it has been in some places.
I'm not sure if our standards get that specific in relation to the counting of private open spaces towards floor area. Have to do some digging.
Sorry, I'm looking for that right now.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, because when I was looking at earlier at the municipal code, my interpretation was that the enclosed balconies are counted against the FAR, but
If it's fully enclosed, then it certainly is, yes.
like on 3 sides covered, everything.
Yeah. The fourth side is where I probably need some clarification. But we can check.
And this is relevant because we're seeing a lot of that type of balcony on recent projects.
Yes, definitely.
So so it's important to some of the other comments that I have.
Yeah.
You can
And
make
I
sure.
will
I'm not following. What's the fourth side? I'm not following what we're talking about.
Railing. So like if you've got a building with a recess for your balcony, but the railing is open to the street or whatever.
But it's in line with the building.
Oh, like you're on the ground floor.
No,
No, like
it's a
second or
balcony.
above.
Oh.
And then, but it's not projecting.
Oh. Like a Juliet type of deal.
You're just kind of set into the wall of the building.
Yeah, Juliet would mean that you can't go out on it. This is like where the building itself has a recess,
Oh.
and that's now an open space.
Okay.
I mean, in this case, it would be an open space. Yeah, I don't know if,
And I'll also say that floor area is one of the things that we are examining as part of the zoning code update. So we are going to make sure that the definition for floor area and what does count as FAR is very much clearly defined.
So through the chair, for the definition of floor area, one of the exclusions this is for other floor area that's not considered single family floor area. One of the exclusions is covered walkways and balconies. So that's not part of floor area.
Okay, well that's good.
That's this section of the code is definition 27.04.200, and it's under subsection B2 exclusions.
Yeah, because the main thing is that when I was looking at these, I was looking at this proposal to require a certain minimum amount of open space per unit, and I was looking at kind of the numbers there. Also, I was curious also how you kind of arrived at those specific numbers.
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about it. I know it's not the clearest of code sections, but so we wanted to ensure that if people were going to be counting those balconies, that they were useful. So the 50 square feet is pretty consistent with what we're seeing with a lot of our projects. And that is a space where you can add outdoor patio space and it can be used for seating rather than like just a Juliet balcony or something like that. So we wanted to encourage developers to include those. In cases where they're not including those balconies, that common space would then become that gathering area for the residents. But because that's shared, we did increase that calculation a bit to accommodate for the shared space. So, and then with the minimum of 30 square feet for the combination of the two, the 30 square feet for the private usable open space, we wanted to ensure that if it was counted at all, it was accessible. So someone with a wheelchair could exit onto that balcony, turn around, and exit back into their home.
Thanks. Question? I mean, for me, I think the thing is that I guess I'll just go straight into my comments on this item, which is that I feel like I have some concerns about the flexibility of these numbers, because I was looking at some of our recent projects that have come before us, and I think the last 3 sort of projects that we've looked at have all included units that have had private open space, and they have also included common open space, but they have also had units with no private open space. Like for instance, we just recently saw the project on B Street that had 28 units, I think I counted, with no private open space. And then there was the Bespoke project, which is 71 units, and none of the units have a private open space. And they have a shared amenity space and a like a community room next to that. But I did the calculation, which is fairly simple, which is 71 times 75. And I came up with a number around like 5,235 square feet. And the Bespoke amenity courtyard is only 4,271 square feet. So by my understanding, that would essentially not be allowed under this. They would have to go up to 5,000 unless they got a waiver.
They would need to supplement it with some other sort of space. So maybe a space at the ground floor or something like that, which can also, in relation to buffers and setbacks, having open space requirements can kind of cause developers to need to provide those spaces on the ground floor. But yes, you're correct. In that case, they would have needed to provide some other open space, or they would have needed a waiver.
Yeah, and I think my concern is just it comes back to flexibility, because like with the with Bespoke, I think they're probably not including my view of that is they're probably not including the balconies for units because they are trying to maximize 2 and 3 bedroom units, and it's probably less expensive to build walls that go straight up and don't have openings and that sort of thing. And then I asked myself, okay, well, do I feel strongly about requiring that a developer give up a potential 3rd bedroom for a balcony? And I don't know if I would make that trade-off myself. And we got a public comment, obviously, this evening about implementing things that are just going to get waived all the time. And I feel like there's the potential for that here, especially on smaller sites where you're, might be more constrained, and you're trying to get the open space, and you're trying to also fit in a certain number of units and stairwells and all these other things. And so I think and again, like with Bespoke, the quality of that amenity space, the common space, I think is pretty high. There's going to be a play area. There's going to be landscaping, nice landscaping, trees. There's going to be open area that community members can use. It opens straight into their community space. I don't think that extra 1,000 square feet is necessarily what makes or breaks the quality of that space for me. And so I think for me, I like the idea of open space, but I don't know that I feel that we should be requiring either that every unit has to have private open space necessarily, or that the common space has to be a very rigid fixed size based on the number of units. I was trying to think of before the meeting, like, what would I propose instead? And I was thinking that maybe what we could do is say that, suggest that when a unit has private open space, here's a minimum amount. And I think developers generally are incentivized to provide open space, private open space, because it is something that people want. And we are seeing it on these projects. We're just not seeing it on maybe like the studios and some of the smaller units. And then again, looking at the project on B Street, the private open spaces ranged in size from 74 feet up to 600 feet. And that was not corresponding to like whether it was a 1 bedroom or 2 bed, just happened to be kind of where it was in the building. So I was thinking that maybe
600.
Yeah, one of those balconies on the top level. I think my suggestion might be like maybe when a unit has private open space, that there be a minimum amount for that. And I think probably applicants might exceed that anyways. And then for common areas, maybe to have it say, instead of saying that there does need to be a provision for open space, for common open space, maybe within a certain percentage of the per dwelling unit figure. And then that a certain percentage of that needs to be usable for certain types of activities. Because I also don't want to require open space and then have it be a pathway with landscaping. I think if we're going to require open space, that it needs to be something that people are going to want to actually take advantage of it. But then I wouldn't say, oh, you can't be all of it, right? But like some percentage of it be usable for social gatherings, a play area, barbecue, et cetera. But I just think that right now the flexibility is missing from this. And I would love to hear what my fellow commissioners have to say.
Well, I actually felt like it did provide some flexibility because it could be addressed, and you dove into it in great detail, but it could be addressed by, private balconies or public space or a combination of both. So, and I like I was thinking about what our public speaker said about, are they really they're not that big, they're not that usable, the minimum size. But really, like you said, it allows somebody to, you could do a 5x6 and you'd have your 5-foot turnaround for a wheelchair user to turn and go back inside. So I feel like I've kind of gone back and forth over the course of the discussion, but I think that it makes sense to me. It provided flexibility. I mean, I like the idea of requiring or encouraging specific uses because, and I would think that would make things more marketable. But in the end, I also do feel like green pathways, planting, biophilic design is going to benefit the community. So some uses make sense. I mean, I often look for I think I asked at one of our recent meetings, is there a place for, a playground? But I guess that wasn't what the expected demographic would be. So whatever the developer, I guess, feels is appropriate, but it's usually something like, seating and barbecuing and, eating outside options, that kind of thing. As well as, like I said, I think biophilic design with greenery and landscaping is critical. Which leads me to something that we touched on briefly that I wanted to go back to. The landscape code requirement and the in-lieu fees are not required. I didn't take good enough notes when we were bringing that up earlier. What are the requirements and why are they being waived? I don't understand why we're not.
Yeah, so our code has requirements that trees of a certain size, when they're being removed as part of a site planning process, they can either be replaced on site or there is a fee that needs to be paid to remove those trees. So the proposal is for projects that are 100% affordable housing to not have to pay those landscape fees.
I disagree with that strongly. I think that people that live in affordable housing should also have greenery and trees, not just the rest of the people.
Yeah, I think it's more about trying to promote the development of affordable housing by reducing fees, but
that means that the people that live there get less than other people. So I feel strongly about greenery and landscaping. I'm not in favor of removing that. Those are my comments.
Do you have any additional comments on
No, I have comments. I mean,
on open space?
I think both of your sets of comments make sense to me, or have pieces that make sense to me. I do think developers are incentivized to have open space, at least private open space. I'm not sure I'd go as far as you want to go about not not 100% sure where you landed on what your actual proposal was.
I think it's also just like we've seen multiple projects recently where not all units, many had private open space, but not all of them did, and that essentially it would be it would just immediately require a waiver, additional
well,
waiver
it would
for
require more common space, right?
Yeah, or that, but then there's a question of do you, in order to get that open space somewhere on the site, do you lose a unit? Do you end up losing a unit? So you reduce I'm just not clear what the ramifications could end up being if this number is very rigid and, if someone is choosing to do something that does not require a waiver.
So your suggestion would be there's no minimum requirement for private open space and there's no, because that is technically what this is. There's no minimum requirement, but
At the moment.
it has to be compensated for with common space, right? Sorry,
You can provide common or private open space or a combination of the
So
two.
You can't have units without. If you're going to have units that you still have, like you can either do the 50 square feet or you can do 30. You can't do 0 and extra common space.
There is an option to just do common open space.
But what if you have does that allow units without?
Correct.
Okay,
Yes.
so it does.
Yes, it does.
and it's just if
seen
you're
that.
choosing to do common space in lieu of having any private space for a certain unit, it's
And
1.5 times as much.
It's a greater
common space.
ratio. Yes.
And one of the problems with, for instance, the project that we saw earlier tonight, where you have, I actually don't know if those buildings are going to have balconies or not, but let's say they did. We saw another project this year where some of the units have balconies, but the ones that are within 500 feet of the freeway will not have balconies. And so, we allow for that now. So I guess, the rent is different, or, some people want it or don't care or whatever. So I think that that's a reasonable difference, in my opinion.
Requiring the 150% common space when you can't have any private space. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I think what I was talking about was this issue of that some units will have private open space and some units will not. And to me, that is acceptable. We're going to see that in buildings.
And but with respect to the proposal, are you comfortable with the 150% more? Am I saying that right? It's 150% more common space if you don't have private space, or it sounds like one possible middle ground to your sort of identified problem will be to say it doesn't have to be 150% common space. It could be the same amount of common space.
I'm happy to have misunderstood the one point about the some units being allowed to not have any, and then to kind of move it over to the common space. But I still think that, like returning to bespoke as an example, right? That would have required an amount of open space in excess of what I think that site would have been capable of handling with the program they're currently moving forward with, because of the nature of the site and their desire to fit in the number of 2 and 3 bedroom units that they did and everything else. It might have this standard and so then they would have probably applied for a waiver, which is fine, but I like the idea of structuring this in ways that minimizes people's necessity to have to seek waivers.
So if this had said for every square foot of private space you don't have, you can have 1 square foot of common space, and so instead of 150%, it's just the same amount. Because that would allow for bespoke, but
I mean, I also don't want to, like some people may pursue more. And this is the minimum, and I'm just concerned about the minimum being too strict, but for smaller parcels, really too, and more constrained parcels, of which we do have, like we have, this will apply to large properties and will apply to smaller properties. And I think that's where this really concern comes in. I'm not sure I have a really strong proposal alternative right now. So maybe I should end my comments there.
Okay. I mean, I think we are gonna have to make a suggestion about, but I guess I'm still not quite understanding.
I mean, maybe
It doesn't require private spaces, which means you have to have 150% of open space, and your concern is that minimum is too high.
I think it could be. I think it could end up being restrictive for some projects on smaller properties, and it would necessitate them going for a waiver. Mm-hmm. And if they're building something that did not otherwise require waivers, then they would have to adhere to that, and it could lead to other compromises in the design that would be detrimental to, like, the number of units they wanted to have, mm-hmm. or other amenities, indoor amenities that they were hoping to include, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So maybe the suggestion I might make is that we ask that this be given another pass, or just a little additional in light of, with these comments before it goes into effect.
Through the Vice Chair, you brought up a couple of examples where they were providing less than what this would be. But I guess I wonder, if we look at more examples, I guess I wonder, those were waivers. I guess I'd like to see more of a comparison of other projects we've seen or that we may see, and projects that, like you said, don't need a wouldn't fall into the category of being eligible for waivers or concessions.
Yeah, I think that might be useful, just like comparing the amount of private open space and common open space that we've been seeing in recent projects, mm-hmm. to get a sense of whether or not this number is going to be achievable.
It's always achievable.
Well, I don't know.
There's always a way. I like I said, I think it's acceptable in my mind.
I'd be comfortable with like a slightly lower requirement for the common open. Like, I'd be comfortable with lowering the minimum, which I think would mean which would mean lowering the minimum of, if you have just private space, lowering that 15 minimum to something a little, I actually think I'd want to keep that. But lowering the amount of common space that you would need to use in lieu of private space to try to address this concern, I would be comfortable with that.
100, 125%, something like that.
If you think it's a concern. But I feel like without kind of additional data points, I guess the proposal would be provide city council with a few more data points and flag that this was an issue and see what they think, I think. But I kind of agree, like, I think maximizing units is really important, but also making sure that people have access to open spaces is important as well, so.
Okay.
And maximizing units is important, but sometimes to meet requirements, that's the push and pull of the design process. And right, it might mean that you lose a unit, as you said, or a 3-bedroom unit goes to a 1-bedroom, or there's often been design ideas that I have thought, well, okay, so you could get better visibility if you had less, bedrooms in this unit. So it's not necessarily reducing the number of units, but the number of bedrooms. But But as I said, that's the push and pull of design.
I had another question about the R5. I mean, R6.
R6.
I promise I know what we're talking about today. The height. Sorry, I'm going to move on from.
We can move on.
Okay. The height for R6 is 75 feet, and the height for R7 is 100 feet, and that means the 7th floor is 12 feet and the 8th floor is 13 feet. And I'm wondering why is that just to have a nice round number?
Yes, we did do some rounding there.
Are those heights consistent? I'm assuming it's just a 12-foot height or
Yeah,
like
so
per floor.
what we did for the heights was we assumed a 14-foot first floor to allow for kind of that welcoming lobby area, or if it's a first floor commercial, typically they like to have a higher plate height. And then we did 12 feet for following floors.
Okay, and is that consistent with putting the commercial to the side for a second?
Yeah.
Just the R7 and R8, is that 14-foot first floor and 12-foot the rest, is that consistent with what we do with the like R5?
We do not have a specific height standard for R5 right now.
Okay.
It's based on the general plan. But this is consistent, I would say, with other projects that we've recently seen. We did some height comparisons of plate heights and floor heights, and it does seem that that's pretty consistent.
Okay, thanks.
Are there any additional questions or comments specifically on R6, R7?
We're on questions or comments. We're trying to wrap.
Questions and comments? Yeah. Free form tonight. All good on R7?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I have some comments that are also sort of questions about the setbacks and the buffers, but I think maybe they're comments before.
Questions, comments?
Oh, okay. I'm having a hard time. I'm having a hard time contextualizing for myself because I don't have a ton of experience with this stuff. The buffers, because 10 feet does not sound like a lot between an 8-story building and like a neighborhood. But is that normal? Like, is this what we should expect to see? Or I think you already said that it is less than what is required by the R5 district. But that the higher setbacks do impact the ability to build, obviously more on those parcels, right?
Yeah, so setbacks are definitely one of those things that we do see waiver requests for, specifically when it is that half building height setback. We've definitely heard concerns from developers with that.
I mean, that's a lot.
Yeah.
50-foot setback.
Yeah. We've looked at some other projects, and that seems to be consistent with what people are requesting. We also, I mentioned earlier, we have our objective design standards, which do require buildings to step in, I believe, above the second story. So it does kind of reduce some of that massing a little bit. But yes, it is intended to provide a denser constructed site.
Mm-hmm. And can I ask, like, if we have any sense, like, how often R7 and R8 zone districts are going to be next to R1 and R2? I mean, because you mentioned these are like intended to be in the denser urban areas. So, like, is this even going to be
Yeah. So there's a map on the screen right now, which shows kind of where these districts are located and where they would be abutting residential. So it seems pretty rare that they're actually directly adjacent to a single family residence. It's more so across the street or something like that. But we do have this provided
We have
here.
those areas along El Camino Real there where basically it's going to be a rear setback for a lot of those properties essentially under these rules, correct?
The residential medium, like at the top, the north part of the map, is that what you're talking about?
Like, but like also like for mixed use high, there's the mixed use high there, kind of sort of like between downtown and 92 there. There's kind of or there's mixed use medium too, rather. But like you basically would get you would get like a rear setback along those essentially under this proposed change rule.
And the side setback's not really gonna matter so much because those are all on their own little blocks.
I think the biggest potential impact is sort of the residential medium two there, the sort of north of downtown, Gateway, those areas.
Or like you said, El Camino, in the middle, like just north of 92.
Yes.
I was looking to see where that Safeway is. I'm not seeing it. But you know, those ones along El Camino, I think, are butting against R1, R2s.
I guess
So, you know, if you think about the person that lives in a house that's going to have an 8-story building built next to them, what do we think is the right setback there?
I mean, I guess another way to put the question is just, where do you want to err in the interim? Because I think this is like something that requires, for me, that I would want to like think about in depth and have some context about what other jurisdictions do and what we do in like comparable situations. And we don't have that because that's not the purpose of this meeting. So I think one way that I might articulate it is just, which way am I more comfortable having in the interim until at least I can have like considered thought about it. One option is less restrictive, and it sounds like there will be some time frame in which we'll have a zoning map where these apply, and people could come and apply for what I'm saying is less restrictive than where we might ultimately land, or more restrictive in the interim, like having more setbacks, and then considering whether to make them less restrictive in the CZCU.
I think this is more workable than the current setback requirements in the lower density zones that we looked at during the study session, where it's directly related to building height.
I agree. I'm not suggesting that we keep the half the building height by any stretch of the imagination. I genuinely don't have a great sense of what the difference between 15 feet and 25 feet is. I guess I'm just raising for folks who do have a better sense of that, whether we think those are sufficient. Since my understanding is the amount of time where these are going to be applicable, hopefully, is fleeting. Maybe I'm comfortable with it until we have, like, I guess generally speaking, I'm more comfortable having less restrictive if it means more housing. So I'd be fine with that, but I know that I would not be very inclined to have an 8-story building 10 feet from the side of my home.
Well, when you were saying that, the time is not a very long timetable, but things get approved and built in that time frame, and then it's built for a long time. The timetable that you're going to be living next to it is a long time for those people that would be. So, it's a concern for me. I feel like they are pretty close, but it's hard. I think seeing the map actually helps me a lot, and so it does seem like we kind of need more time to kind of consider where these would occur.
Yeah, I think the other thing to just flag too is that most of these areas, I mean, the vast majority of them, it seems like, are gonna be within the appropriate distance of the Caltrain station to take advantage of the laws where this isn't necessarily gonna matter anyways.
Yeah, I mean, because
So
haven't we heard that like the whole city is basically within, I mean, we're fortunate we have 3 train stations, and so
yeah.
really like most areas of the city are within that.
Yeah, so I kind of think that actually in light of that, I would be interested in maybe greater setbacks, knowing that most of it's not going to matter for parcels that are close enough to the Caltrain, which is most of them, and the ones that aren't close enough to the Caltrain, maybe you would want, I guess I'd be more comfortable having some of the more like conservative standards apply. But what do you think?
Sorry, we're conferring over here to see if we have a map somewhere that shows that, because I don't believe it's true that most of the parcels are within those.
Oh, really?
I should.
We're going to see if we can pull something up.
Oh, okay.
I would say that in terms of the setbacks proposed in the various districts, I think front yard none, side yard none. When touching another, parcel of the same density or higher, I think that's fine. The side and the rear, as has been mentioned, if someone is going to be doing a density bonus project, and it's not going to work for them, they request a waiver. In terms of these proposed buffers, I don't think that this would be. I think this is probably fine for me. When I'm thinking about tall building next to a sort of like a very tall building next to a single family home, a row of single family homes, the image that always pops into my head, because I've talked about it with people before, is Postcard Row up in San Francisco, where you have this row of really delightful Victorian, cottages, which everybody most people are very familiar with. And then right next to that, which most people don't think about, is the fact that there's a 13-story apartment building and there's a 0 setback there. And I think in that case, the real question, and I've been in those homes and they're not negatively impacted by that there. And I think the reason why they're not is because they still get adequate light. They're still they're across from a beautiful park. There's landscaping. There's all these other factors besides just having a taller building next to a shorter building that I think, like all these different aspects of design, which I think can make a bigger difference on whether or not there's a 10-foot setback or a 12-foot setback. In this case, most of what we're talking about, like with R6, is 6 stories, not 12 stories. If it's abutting it, and then like those parcels on El Camino, it's going to have that. It would have a rear setback of 15 feet. And I think if you're designing a project like that, you want to have some space in the back of that project where it's away from the street, it's quieter. People are going to be incentivized for other reasons to maybe even have a bigger setback than that in the rear, potentially for balcony space and that sort of thing. So, to me, this is probably fine. I think this is probably okay. And I don't think that, and again, we could, if we say that this is something that we will have an opportunity to revisit and see whether or not it hasn't been working, then we can adjust it for the longer term.
Okay.
I mean, it's kind of a difficult one, because I do feel like if we look at, I don't know, I've lost my page. 15 feet. Well, it's not necessarily, part of it is the distance, but it's also the height. And you talk about what comes to mind for you. What comes to mind for me, and I was trying to find it just now on maps, like where it is, but there's a street across from Central Park that I've turned on many times, and there's a couple houses that are very impacted by, I don't know, they're like 10-story buildings or something, right, like on their right next to them. And it doesn't really matter so much what the distance is. It's the height difference between a 1-story house and a backyard and, a 10-story apartment building. I wish I could find what that street is, but it's in that neighborhood that's kind of west of El Camino and north of like the Catholic church that's over there, St. Matthew's, I think it is. And anyway, so there's a really good example of a very tall apartment building, towering over a 1-story house. And
I mean,
I don't know
if it's abutting, if you have a property like that, which is abutting a lower density zone, and the setback is, and the building is 8 stories, it's going to be a similar impact if it's a 50-foot setback or a 15-foot setback.
That's right. So it's a hard question to say if this is the right setback. I mean, I think my thought is, a normal setback for like R1, if you're looking at the residential, the R1 property, their setback is, 15, 20 feet or something on the, so it's the rear. So yeah, I feel kind of torn because I don't feel like there's a great number that's going to lessen the impact of that tall building next to an R1. So
Okay.
I guess part of me feels like in the interim.
Yeah.
On the other hand, I guess in the interim, maybe it's acceptable.
Yeah.
So are we?
This map is helpful. Thank you. I'm fine with the setbacks because my new comment is going to be maybe we should be considering not updating the zoning map until we finish the comprehensive zoning code update, because then, I get why we need these in the interim, but I do have concerns about whether we are being too conservative in the interim or whether we're being too restrictive, and I feel like I don't have enough context to know, whereas through the comprehensive process, which is not going to take that much longer comparatively to how drastic it's going to be, why we wouldn't just wait till we have been able to more deeply consider questions like this. So I'm fine with the proposed language.
So for now, just because I think we'll if I don't ask, we'll get asked later. It just we're in agreement with the numbers here for the in all the zones, the setbacks and the buffers.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Just keeping us moving. MU3.
Found it, Mission Drive.
Oh, yeah. Do we have any questions about MU3, MU4?
Yeah, I have a question written here. Are there one of the proposals, I can't, tell me if what I'm asking makes sense because I don't remember what this is about. It says are there any maximum heights whatsoever for the ground floor retail for FAR?
No, not for FAR.
Okay. So you could have a 30-foot ground floor and it doesn't count towards FAR, but it counts
towards maximum height, yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Could I clarify that? It doesn't count even once?
Oh, sorry. It would count once, yes, but right now it would count double. So that's the clarification that we're proposing.
Thank you.
Sorry.
FAR is far out to this non-land use person.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just clarifying that.
Yeah. I wanted to, when on the subject of the mixed-use districts, I did want to, and I had asked about this before the meeting, and I just wanted to bring it up, which was that we had talked about mixed use minimum density about a year ago. And at that meeting, there had been a recommendation from the commission to city council to look at, instead of having just a fixed number of units per acre as the minimum, there was a recommendation to look at the possibility of using a ratio to calculate that, and where essentially the amount of the square footage of office space would be based on the number of units, based on a certain figure. And then city council did adopt that recommendation to direct staff to study that. And I just wanted to see if we could possibly get an update for ourselves and the public and city council on the status of that.
If I could sort of ask a follow-up question. I was not here at the time. But where we are is that, we're considering all of these various factors as we're updating comprehensively the zoning code update. But I would also be curious to know, and obviously I can take a look at the reports from all that, but sort of the intention behind that particular one, so that we can get a better sense of what it is that we're trying to achieve as we're looking into that and doing that analysis.
Yeah, well, I think the idea was to, we do get a lot of comments about from the community about the office housing imbalance, and I believe, if I'm recalling the intention correctly from a year ago, it was kind of in response to that there are other jurisdictions in the area which have implemented this, at least in portions of cities, to sort of address this, where if, and we've seen a few examples where projects had included a sort of minimum number of housing units to unlock streamline approval for what was essentially an office project. And so to kind of combat that imbalance and to sort of forestall that sort of project, I think the idea was to include this minimum, but then this was just kind of another way to maybe possibly increase unit count versus the amount of office space. I believe that was what the idea was. But obviously, the direction at the time was the recommendation and direction at the time was essentially to kind of look into it and do more analysis on the feasibility of that type of ratio.
Okay, thank you. And I'll turn it over to Zach, who's up on screen.
Yeah, let's through the vice chair. Yes, we will still be looking at that. I think the key is we want to understand what the objective of that kind of requirement would be. We do have minimum densities, which kind of got to the issue of concerns related to a project that was primarily office that was providing just enough housing to then unlock waivers, concessions. But in reality, we only had one such project which triggered that larger discussion. So we do have minimum densities for mixed use projects when housing is a component. So because that's the thing with these mixed use districts, is they are really open and allow for a range of uses. And overall, obviously, we're looking at the city's housing production, how we can increase that to meet our goals. But there is also concerns if we are requiring housing as a part of a mixed-use project, as opposed to when it is proposed, ensuring we're getting minimum quantities. So the important thing is to understand what it is that we're looking to solve for with a requirement like that. But we'll speak to it further as the process continues, and likely when we have the overall draft comprehensive code update, and we speak to it both within the transit areas and then citywide.
Great, thank you. I will look forward to it when it comes back to us again. That was my kind of comment on like mixed use. Specifically, I'm just moving down the agenda report here. Are there any more comments on MU3, MU4?
There was a public comment about the types of uses, the lists of what you can have. How did we come up with that? Are those like just what we allow in others plus, I mean, I see that it actually does incorporate what we allow in others, plus some other things that maybe you wouldn't want in a less dense area. Is that like?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
We reviewed our commercial districts and took a look at the permitted uses within those districts. We modernized some of those uses, and some were removed that were potentially incompatible with mixed use or being near residential, but generally pretty consistent with what we allow in commercial district to allow for that flexibility.
What's an example of something that would be inconsistent near resident? Is that like tattoo parlors? Not to expose things that I think are.
No, that's okay. I'm trying to remember.
It's fine.
I don't have a specific example, but I mean something like a loud auto service industrial use, something like that, right? And then also just to add, those are coming from the broader direction of the general plan, in which each one of those comparable land use designations has a description or an intent statement, and that describes generally the intent of what is supposed to be in that designation, and so that's what we're getting our guidance for what more specific uses should be included from.
Okay, so it like kind of spells out what we want the like look and feel of this place to be, and these are the types of uses you would expect to see in that sort of type of look and feel, basically. Okay, that's helpful. Thanks. And then there was a public comment about the height of commercial stories. This is the one we received right before the meeting. So the proposed height for the mixed use 3 for non-residential is 50 feet, which assumes floor heights of somewhere between 12 and 13 feet, if my math is correct. This public commenter, who's a developer, said that that's not consistent with, what is best. I'm trying to pull it up so I can just read it.
I think it was market, like what market is looking for is closer to 15.
Yeah.
Yeah, it says, right. It says, okay, I'm just gonna read the whole thing. We note that it appears this assumed floor plate heights for non-residential buildings are 13 feet per floor. This is not reflective of a marketable high-quality commercial space. A typical marketable office building has an 18-foot floor-to-floor height at the ground floor and 15 feet floor-to-floor heights on upper levels. And we request that you make the height limit more consistent with that. And do you have response to that comment? Like, is that true in our experience, or?
Yeah, so we definitely do see ground floors higher than 14 feet, which is what we used to make that calculation. But we also see subsequent floors that are lower than 12 feet often. They can generally be around 9 feet or so. So we tried to strike a balance that would allow that flexibility to maybe have a taller bottom floor and then lower upper floors. We also wanted to be sensitive to the community in that this is not the formal zoning code update. So there will be additional outreach happening related to building heights. So those are the reasons why we went with that number that we've proposed.
Yeah, and I didn't catch that in that last email, but at 15 feet floor to floor for residential?
For mixed use, for commercial. Actually, he said non-residential. So this is the non-residential,
Yeah,
but
but
in
to
the
go,
mixed use.
yeah, so to go greater than that. But that's not the first floor, that's the upper floors.
So the commenter said 15 feet, this is non-residential commercial space, 15 feet for the first floor, and then, 18 feet for the first floor, and then 15 feet floor to floor for the upper levels. That's what he said, what his representative said. No, it's him, he signed it, yeah. And so, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I was just sort of doing the math, and for floor to floor, I mean, that's, yeah. I was thinking that was residential. I was misreading it.
So I think for a 5-story building, if the proposal would be essentially add 3 feet for the first floor and 2 feet for every floor thereafter. So it'd be something like on the order of 75 to 80 feet for a 5-story, which is the maximum height for the 6-story R6 is 75 feet. So it would be essentially a 5-story building that is the same height as, comparable height to the to a 6-story residential building.
And through the vice chair, I think we also, community development director Zach Dahl has something to add.
A giant head on the screen here. To provide a little color and context to this one, this is tied to various discussions during the general plan update process. And in particular, there's a policy that speaks to community benefits. And the notion that we really don't have any pathway for community benefits when a project includes housing. There's state law, state density bonus, concessions waivers, that's all off the table. However, for non-residential projects, there are still opportunities for community benefits as part of projects. And so that policy in particular, and then with direction on a subsequent study session with council, the notion was we've got a height range for these districts. And the goal of the higher height range for mixed use was to facilitate housing. So when we've got a non-housing per project proposal, let's set the height range at the low end of the range and then allow it to go to the upper range with provision of community benefits. So you set the limit low at the bottom end within the range. That's why we have the range. And then if a project wants to go taller, that's where we have a pathway to get some community benefits as part of the project. Similar with the overall height limit, based on community input, council direction, we didn't necessarily want to set it at the very high end, but a reasonable midpoint. And then also similarly, there's a pathway for community benefits if they want to push it to the max. So that's kind of the thought with the 2 height limits and then where we propose the height limit. Obviously, we're looking for council or commission direction on that, but that's the thought process and how the discussion went during the general plan for why we landed at these 2 points.
So just to make sure I'm understanding that, they can go, if we set the maximum height at 65 feet for mixed use, for high density mixed use, they could go higher than that by paying some community benefits. Is that what you're saying?
That was the thought. We don't have a program set up yet, but there's definite interest in it. And so the goal is if we set the height limit at the upper end, then we don't have anything left. They get everything they want, but a reasonable lower point, and also the community interest in the goal of the heights in mixed use is to facilitate housing. So if it's not providing housing, let's set it at the low range and then work from there. And if it's not housing, maybe there's other community benefits that can be provided instead.
I see.
So
to the
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
disincentivize strictly commercial spaces, incentivize mixed use spaces, and if you're gonna do a strictly commercial space, try to find ways to have these community benefits.
Exactly. And then if you look at the language in the land use policy that speaks to community benefits, it has a specific provision about allow these non-residential projects to go higher with the provision of community benefits. So this lower height limit is meant to facilitate that discussion about community benefits.
I like the idea of leaving yourself room for to negotiate, something that's going to benefit the community, and we've seen that in the past on projects. So I like the idea of leaving yourself that leeway.
Yeah, likewise.
I mean, yeah, it makes good sense, but it's also sort of like, is the trade-off going to be that, they don't build anything and we need it, or like, is the trade-off going to be that they build a commercial space that's not actually that enticing, and then we have empty commercial spaces? But
And because of the height, the ceiling height?
I mean, whatever. Like, yeah, that's what we're talking about actively here. But
Yeah, but
I think this specific example would be like for a multi-story building, which would be commercial on the ground floor and non-residential uses entirely above.
right, so
Yeah.
right, so commercial use is the whole
Yeah,
thing there.
yeah.
And,
Yeah.
I mean,
I'm fine with it.
yeah, I mean, I think if you, you know, it's a negotiation, and it's also, you know, it's always, I'm assuming that on the developer side, it's always a balancing act. They're, you know, they're not doing anything out of the goodness of their heart. They want to do a good project, but you know, I think the incentive to provide, you know, the community benefits. I mean, we talked about on one project, the project on B Street, that, you know, they need to do what, I forget what they're called, those visible crosswalks, you know, and it's like, you know, that was different because that was residential, but you know, there are things that projects affect in the surrounding area that when we have the opportunity to have those effects be addressed by the project, I think it's worthwhile. We can't do that on residential.
Okay.
Do we have any more comments on mixed use? No? Okay, so we did touch on the next item, which is the update to the landscaping requirements. Commissioner Williams had some comments about that already, and I just wanted to clarify, because I think there was a question about whether or not this basically eliminated the need for a certain 100% affordable developments to include any landscaping. I think just to clarify, I think my understanding of this is that it just simplifies it removes the fee, and then they would simply be required to have the standard, as it says here, the applicable tree preservation and landscaping requirements remain in effect. It just sort of simplifies the planning process for those projects. Is that correct?
Sorry, 1 second. So they would be exempt from the landscape code. So the code does have certain standards related to plantings and things like that. So they would be exempt from that. We would encourage, of course, landscaping to be provided on site, and they would need to potentially provide that through common open space requirements, but they would be exempt from that code. I see Zach on the screen, so maybe he wants to clarify.
Yes, through the vice chair, just kind of providing a little color to this one. The reason for this amendment is primarily related to this chapter imposes a landscape unit in lieu fee. And so what we found is, depending on the site, if there's, say, a mature tree on one site, there's huge variability in when the amount that this in lieu fee can be charged. Sometimes we're talking a couple $1,000s, sometimes it's tens of thousands of dollars. And so what we were seeing is there's a little bit of an inequity about similar projects could be assessed different levels of fee. And so the thought is, for 100% affordable projects, this is a pathway to level the playing field. So one site versus another doesn't levy a different amount of fee on a project. So there's other sections of the code that still ensure landscaping requirements will be met with these projects. It's primarily because this chapter requires this in lieu fee. Right now, single family projects are exempt, and so we'd be saying single family projects and 100% affordable, and it's primarily to ensure that some projects aren't levied with a specific and potentially large fee. So that's the primary motivation here for this amendment.
Thanks for that clarification.
I'm in support of this change.
Me too. I think reducing any fees that we can for affordable housing is worth it.
Yeah, I think I am, because it's, as you said, there's still landscape requirements. It just doesn't mean the in lieu fees. I mean, there's a landscape code, isn't there? Like, in terms of irrigation and drought, that's part of Cal Green building code. So they have to comply with like those things if they do have landscaping.
That's correct, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great. So if it's okay with my fellow commissioners, move on to the cleanup items. All these, some of which we'd already sort of touched on, I think. The first one was the change to the spa requirement. And I think this is something that we had seen before in another version, sort of, and phrased a little bit differently, but essentially where we were sort of reducing for projects that were compliant anyways and were going to be approved anyways, that it would sort of reduce the number of meetings. Sort of my impression of this.
We did previously pass a code amendment that stated that if there's inconsistencies between the zoning code and the general plan, that the general plan would be the regulation. So that might be what you're thinking of, because that would limit people needing to take their projects to city council.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't have any comments or questions on any of the cleanup items, to be honest.
I just found it a little confusing how it went from the SPAR to the community care facility. And was that just like sort of a renumbering process?
Yes, that was
Okay.
a numbering.
Okay, I was like, what's happening here?
Yeah.
But that's what I figured. Okay, and then that started raising questions in my mind, but I think that all makes sense.
Do we just want to just do all the cleanup items at once? Does anyone have any questions on the other cleanup items?
Oh, yeah, sorry, no, I wasn't trying to usurp the process. Just so you know, I'm not going to have any questions.
Okay.
I'm just double checking.
I have a few, so I'll let you, Commissioner Williams, you have the...
Yeah, I think the main thing was just I wanted to make sure I was just renumbering. That wasn't... I don't have any other questions.
I have some questions / comments on retail. There was the retail FAR standards. I definitely like the idea of removing the requirement that anything over 18 feet be counted twice for FAR. I think that makes a lot of sense. I was looking at this and I thought, if you have this really tall retail space, I might even go a little further and say, hey, we might want to encourage people to put a mezzanine in there, because that kind of increases the practicality of that. And of course, mezzanine's not going to become a full floor. There are rules about mezzanines not exceeding a certain size and being open and that sort of thing. And so it wouldn't necessarily be, getting extra space if we were to maybe even, I would kind of go as far as say, maybe what if we considered including a FAR exemption for mezzanines or something like that. I don't know.
So we have started reviewing that as part of the comprehensive code update. So mezzanines have been flagged as something that we're doing some research into and looking into right now.
Great. I mean, that's so always good to hear that I'm not alone in thinking that. So yeah. Then that can wait. And I'll look forward to seeing it. The in-person sale requirements, I'm totally on board with removing the limitation, this 50% limitation on online business. But I did have a little bit of a worry about doing away with it entirely. My concern is could we see a situation essentially where you have someone operating a retail business that's entirely online out of one of these storefronts, and that would now essentially be allowed under this proposed change?
So it would still need to be a retail site, they would still need to be providing a service for people who walk into the store. I believe that's also one of the requirements within the required retail frontage zone, is that people have to be able to walk into the store and interact with the primary use of the site.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, I think that was my concern, was that there could end up being a business there, like a ghost kitchen or something, and you can't actually walk in and order food. You just have to interact with an app, and the storefront is closed down.
Yeah. Ghost kitchens would be an entirely separate use. So that's definitely also something that has been on our radar recently.
Okay, yeah, I just like there was a sort of I wouldn't call it a ghost kitchen, but there was like a sort of like a multi concept restaurant space that was downtown for a while, and you could still walk in there and order. And my concern would just be a situation where that, you know, like the only way to interact with that retail store would be to pull out your phone on the sidewalk, but it sounds like that's not a concern, so that's good. That was everything I had about the cleanup items.
Did we ever land on answering the question from staff about whether FAR should apply to residential units for mixed use?
Yes, yes, there were two items I think that we still had open, which was this interesting FAR question, and then the open space thing. I think we hadn't given clear direction on that. So the FAR, yes, have either of you come up with anything on that? I have some thoughts.
Maybe if I hear
guess,
your thoughts, I'll understand it better.
Yeah, I can't sort of. Yeah, I'd rather hear your thoughts, I guess, because I can't get my head around the idea that like that there still shouldn't be some way to calculate. I mean, I get that there's other methods to calculate, but it just seems like a starting point. Could we
bring that? Is there a way to get that up on screen? That language.
And so this is what exactly.
Yeah, let me work on getting that up on here.
It's like if you do count it towards FAR, then you might end up with fewer residential units. If you don't count it towards FAR, then because the only thing keeping it in check is the other standards like the height and the density.
Well, there's I was thinking about it while we were having our other discussion, sort of little conversation in my head, and I was thinking about this, and I feel like I actually kind of like this on some level. There is a so like the commercial and any sort of office use would still be limited by FAR, but then if you're going to have housing on top of that, you're limited by the other aspects of our code, the height limit, the density limit, units per acre, and it kind of turns it into more of a form-based limitation than a FAR limitation, which I think there are plenty of examples of jurisdictions that do have a sort of a form-based code rather than have it be guided by FAR.
What do you mean by that?
Where like the limitation, like if your limitation is 6 stories and you can't go above 6 stories, then you're not, you're doing a 6-story building. Okay. And we have design standards that, and safety codes and all of the various things that limit what is realistically can be constructed on a site, on a parcel. So you're not going to end up, if you don't have like a specific FAR limitation, you're not going to end up with something completely outsized. You're just going to, that's kind of my impression, right? So but what this does still do is it still limits It actually kind of comes back to that ratio question, right? Like we're limiting, we're still having a sort of a limitation on non-residential uses, and then the residential uses are limited by just the sort of the shape of what can be constructed, according to all the other rules that we have in place.
Which is how that's how the actual residential districts work too, right?
Well, no, there's FAR as that, as I think as Zach had said earlier, FAR has usually been an additional consideration that has to be accounted for because everything counts towards FAR.
So in this mixed use proposal, could you have like the barest amount of commercial space and then the rest is residential, not subject to the FAR, not subject to a FAR. So you're basically like, by putting one like small commercial space, you're alleviating the need to comply with FAR, which you otherwise would need to do if you were in a residential district.
Well, this is specifically for commercial, correct? No?
No, for mixed use.
This is for mixed use.
This is.
But we've also said that you have to have, like in certain areas, like you have to have certain like commercial on the ground floor,
Yes.
and you can't have residential on the ground floor.
So whatever your floor plate is.
For all the mixed use?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So first floor has to be, it cannot be residential. So you're going to be, establishing, I mean, you're not going to have difficulty meeting your FAR if it's only on the first
Can
floor.
I clarify something quickly?
Please.
So within the mixed use district, you can have residential on the first floor. The commercial districts, you cannot have residential on the first floor.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So in the mixed use district, you could potentially have an entirely residential building.
Which is what Commissioner Bush said.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you don't have the FAR applied to residential portions of a building, right, because this is not what we're talking about. This language is erased from my brain. Okay, if the FAR doesn't apply to residential portions, and in a mixed use district, you have a building that's only residential, then it will not have FAR apply, even though that same building in the residential district would have a FAR.
The R6 and the R7 districts do not currently have a FAR proposed. Some of our other residential districts do.
Okay, I think that's why I was confused. Okay. Then I agree with
I have a question. Do you foresee, I'm just wondering in practice, like I guess there's not any difficulty or anything precluding those two calculations, one with FAR, one with density.
No, it just makes things a little bit more difficult for our developers because they do have to show it graphically. So they would provide a page in the plan set showing what counts. Yeah. But otherwise, no, it's not a difficult calculation for us to kind of verify and review. Yeah.
Yeah, it seems very odd to have the two going on, but I guess it's not that strange. It does seem, it would be, I mean, it's breaking it out into two different methods and documenting that, I guess.
But it's also that if the residential does count towards FAR, which is what we currently do in the mixed use, correct?
So we don't currently have either of these districts. So
Sorry. Okay.
And commercial.
The language on the screen is confusing me. I stop looking at it. Okay. If we did count the residential towards the FAR, is this a true statement? It would be there would be more limitations on building residential in a mixed use district than there are currently in building residential in the R6 and R7 districts we're proposing, because they do not have a FAR.
correct.
Okay, I don't see why they shouldn't be consistent. Want to, I think we want to encourage building mixed use residential And if we have an additional restriction on residential and mixed use that doesn't exist in the residential district, you are going to discourage, or it's going to be less encouraging.
And I would also clarify that we may very well end up with a FAR calculation for R6 and R7. We didn't include it at this time because the general plan does not have one outlined, and we're really trying to keep these districts consistent with the general plan. But like many other standards tonight, it's definitely something we're considering with the zoning code update. So,
okay, well, I think my suggestion would be that until that happens, we keep the language that is stricken so it's consistent for the reasons I just said.
I just want to clarify something you said just now. You said that the general plan doesn't have an FAR, but and so you're trying to make things consistent with the zoning code. But has the general plan ever had a FAR? Like, isn't that the way, like, hasn't that always been specific to the zoning code?
So the FARs that we've proposed for the mixed use districts are taken directly from the general plan.
Okay, but we didn't have, I mean, for everything else that's, all the other areas, like R1, R through R6, those, or through R5, I guess.
Yeah, those live in the zoning code but are not within the general plan.
Are.
Correct.
I mean, not in the general plan. So,
yes.
Like, to me, the general plan is a bigger picture item, and this FAR is the nitty gritty of the zoning code. So,
yeah,
not having it just so that we are consistent with because the general plan doesn't have it. To me, that doesn't really matter. It's always been a specificity of the zoning code.
Well, I'm in favor, and just to clarify also what we're looking at on the screen, what we're seeing on the screen here, it says it looks like it's stricken, but it's not. It's supposed to be underlined, or
this would, so currently in the code, it does have that text about the floor area.
Yeah.
So the striking would be if you were to direct us to remove that text.
Okay, so
Yeah.
So striking it means we're saying residential should count towards the FAR, which is what
we would set a maximum of zoning for the whole building and structure in those zones of FAR 4.
Yes.
But
for
I'm
mixed use
thinking
3.
I
But
actually
and that is what staff currently do, correct? Because that was why you brought this up.
We
in
don't
the
have
first
this
place.
zone right
Because
now.
no, but there was a comment at the very beginning of the meeting that there was some consistent practice that this was inconsistent with, correct?
That is correct. We are trying to make this consistent
With the staff's current practice.
Yes. Sorry, it's complicated.
So to bring it to bring it into line with the existing, you're saying that would be to striking this would be bringing this in line with the existing policy is what you're saying.
Yeah, and so striking this, just if it's not clear, this text is the new text, not any existing text. We're not striking it from existing text. We're striking it from the proposed ordinance.
Yes.
Yeah. So, okay.
You wish you had never proposed the last sentence.
I know,
because if you hadn't, it would have been consistent with the way the staff currently do it.
Yes.
But we did propose the last sentence, and there is a policy question baked into it, which is that a good idea? But it sounds like perhaps that's a question maybe we should answer in the next round. And for now, we should just let staff continue doing what they do and strike this proposed language.
Well, you're making a recommendation to city council tonight anyway, so it's more of a suggestion to how you want city council to look at it.
I like I said, I think I kind of like the new language. I think that the other rules and standards and codes that we have in place are going to prevent anything from going totally crazy with, out a limitation on residential units. I think it encourages residential units over. I think it encourages the amount of residential in these projects, but potentially encourages the residential component to be larger than it might otherwise be. I think people are they're going to leverage density bonuses and they're going to go up higher than our, heights allow and anyways in some cases. And then, again, there are still practical limitations there. So, we have our inclusionary requirements, all these other things. So I'm leaning towards not striking it.
But staff made this recommendation as part of the process.
Staff is actually not making a specific recommendation about it. We're asking for your thoughts on it.
I mean, I could go either way. I feel like it's very unusual to me.
I mean, again, this is something which is not uncommon elsewhere. It's not. I think it's probably not how it's been done here, but I think it's.
Is that true? I didn't know that.
Am I totally wrong? I think this is kind of like a form based. It kind of turns into sort of a form based limitation rather than a FAR limitation.
Well, they're all sort of a form of form based. They all sort of create the envelope that development can happen within.
Yeah. I mean, I'm fine with it. I'm not going to vote against it, I guess. I don't know.
I would keep the language as proposed in the track changes and not strike it. Because I think it, for the reasons that Commissioner Clapter said, it seems like, if my understanding is correct, it will encourage residential units in mixed-use spaces more consistently with the encouragement of residential units in residential districts. So I'm in support of the originally proposed language. And it sounds like you're neutral, so 2.5 in favor.
All right then, and then I think the last thing that we had probably to revisit was the question on like my concerns about open space. I've also been thinking about that while we've been talking about other stuff, and I'm still not sure that I could formulate a really clear recommendation right now, other than maybe just to say that, like, if we were to simply go with the current proposal right now, a recommendation that this be studied a little more. We see how projects applicants respond to the requirements. Are they consistently requesting waivers for certain, to go up, to go down below the minimum that they would be required to do, and then adjust it as needed when we do the final revisions.
I think I think I would suggest that we, I don't know, propose, like, I'm fine with the language as proposed, and that we see if we can agree that for this language in the interim and for the exact suggestion that you just made, which is between now and the final zoning code update, looking more specifically into this to make sure that when the time comes, we have more information to edit it then. That's what I would propose.
I agree.
And I'd be happy in the interim too, if you wanted to make the ratio a little lower, if that would appease a little bit of your concerns.
I don't know that I can confidently right here now say what the right number is. It just feels like that number may be restrictive if it's too fixed, but that's why I think I'm at this point I would just say that I would recommend that it just be looked at and revisited if needed.
So would your proposal be that for the actual language going to city council that they exclude this requirement?
No, I think it would just be that it be and like how it is adopted by applicants and used by applicants be analyzed, and then I guess Q1, Q2, when it comes back to us, that
I think we're saying the
yeah.
same thing.
So I'm hearing just leave as is for now
Yes.
for council, but study it.
Study.
And of course, projects will also be able to use waivers if they're taking advantage of density
Yes.
bonus.
Yes. A recommendation to just see how it's been going.
Yeah, and I agree. I take no exception to the numbers at this time.
On my little list, I think we've gone over everything. Is there anything that we have not provided clear comments on?
Do we now need a motion or?
Can we bring the text of the resolution on screen, please? Recommendation.
I'll make a motion that we recommend to City Council the following on screen as per.
Yeah, like subject to our comments at the meeting.
Along with our additional few recommendations.
Is that your motion?
Yes, along with our recommendations.
Second.
Great, can we have a vote?
Commissioner Williams,
Yes.
Commissioner Bush,
Yes.
and Vice Chair Clafter.
Yes.
Motion passes 3-0.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
We have one more item 3, election of officers. But there was some question earlier about this that we wanted to get some clarification on because we did not expect that we would only have 3 of us here. So we wanted to get here.
Yes. So I think the recommendation is that we actually continue this item until the next meeting. And I understand that Vice Chair Clafter will not be here at the next session, but we're told that that is okay.
Okay, then.
Wait, so can we just continue it to a date certain, like say the date, time?
Yes, yeah. Let's continue it to the next meeting, which is July 14th at 7 o'clock. Yeah.
Yes, okay. I will make a motion to continue item 3 until the July 14th meeting at 7 p.m.
Second.
May we, Olivia, could you please call the vote?
Vice Chair Clafter,
Yes.
Commissioner Bush,
Yes.
and Commissioner Williams.
Yes.
Motion passes 3-0.
Thank you. And our last item then is reports and announcements. Are there any other announcements from the staff or city attorney?
Just that we've now added a new item to the July 14th meeting. In addition to the 2 other items on the agenda are the Clearview proposed project, and then also a proposed mini storage on Claremont. In the absence of Vice Chair Clafter, since we have not actually selected a chair and vice chair, will need somebody to run the next meeting. Do we need to vote on that? Let's take a vote. Could we have like a nomination and a vote just for next week's?
Additional point of clarification. So if I am absent from that meeting, does item 3, does the election happen at that time?
As long as we have a quorum.
Okay.
Which is the 3
Yes.
of us.
I'm happy to help with the next meeting. Run the meeting. I'm happy to be in charge of the next meeting.
Good.
So do we have to have a formal nomination? I will second that.
I move to give myself the gavel for the next meeting.
I second.
Oh, wait. We've got Zach. Zach, do you have
Really quick.
recommendations?
One last big head on the wall comment. Do we want to move the chair vice chair meeting into our next meeting in August when we have all 5 commissioners present, since I know we've only got 3 tonight, so we're delaying it. So does it make sense to wait until we have all 5 commissioners seated to have that chair vice chair election?
And our second meeting in July, we would not have,
Not have a second meeting in July.
We technically closed that item, and I actually forgot we were probably supposed to take public comment on it.
Oh.
Should we reopen item number 3?
I would be happy to reopen item 3
Okay.
for public comment.
However, I would also like to note that we may be canceling the July 28th meeting because we don't have any agenda items, and also this room is going to be under construction, so we can't totally confirm that. But at the moment, we do not have items agendized.
Okay, so let's do public comment on item number 3.
Yes, I would like.
Let's redo the vote for who will chair while the item is now open again. Go ahead.
Yes, I would like to reopen item 3 to public comment. If you are in chambers and wish to speak on this item, please submit your yellow speaker slip to staff. If you are online and wish to speak on this item, please raise your hand now.
Are there any public comments?
Are there any requests to speak?
Through the vice chair, there are no requests to speak.
Thank you. I will close public comment again.
Okay, so we.
That was Mazrin just trying to take away my power, is what it feels like.
So now we have a motion for Commissioner Bush to chair the next meeting.
Could we?
Did we vote
Zach's
on that?
got his hand
Go
again.
ahead, Zach.
Given that it might be a meeting or two before we have all 5 commissioners up on the dais, there's no public notification associated with this meeting. Why don't we just continue to a date uncertain, and then we'll find the next meeting that all 5 commissioners are present and reschedule it for then?
I'm happy to do that. I also don't know that we need all 5 of us to do the item. Like, we could just put it on the 14th, and if there's 3 of us, then we can continue it again. If there's 4 of us, I don't know why we need 5. But it's totally up to staff. Like, whatever's easiest is fine. For me, in my opinion.
And we already technically took a vote to continue it to that date certain, and it passed.
To the July 14 meeting.
yeah, so, in assuming there's 3, we have a quorum.
And then at the July 14th meeting, the commission could decide to continue it again. Yeah.
So that probably satisfies that for now.
Yes, I think for
Well,
now.
okay, that was regarding the continuance.
So now I move again to take all the power at the next planning commission meeting.
She is getting scary.
I'm totally kidding.
When you put it that way. No, I would second your chairing of the next meeting,
Okay.
running the next meeting.
So there's a motion for Commissioner Bush to chair the July 14th meeting at 7
It's
p.m.
not exactly what my motion was, but
Yes.
Did she make her own motion on that? Anyway, you've seconded it, so should we?
Yeah, hello.
have a vote?
Yes.
Commissioner Bush,
yeah.
Vice Chair Clafter,
Yes.
and Commissioner Williams.
Yes.
Motion passes 3-0 for Commissioner Bush to be the chair for the next meeting.
Reports and announcements.
We will keep you posted on any information we have about the upcoming meetings, I
Thank
think
you.
is the announcement.
Are there any reports and announcements from my fellow commissioners?
Oh, I'm trying to get more in the habit of thanking the staff. So thank you so much for your wonderful work and your presentation. But I don't have any announcements.
Yes, thank you to the staff for putting up with our meandering conversation this evening, my first running of a meeting, and
Good job. Nice job.
and all of the reports and everything was excellent as always. So thank you for that. As was mentioned, I will be going overseas. Returning, I will be absent for the July 14th meeting, and I will be returning in time if there is a if there is going to be a second meeting in July, and will be present thereafter.
What is the preferred lead time to know? I've told you when I'm going to be gone on a trip in the fall, but what's the preferred lead time to sort of announce it at this meeting?
Don't know if there's, I don't believe there's anything in the handbook. I think just as early as possible, unless, of course, in the case of tonight for Commissioner Shamko, there's an emergency.
This would just remind me of procedure. Do I need to make a motion to adjourn?
No.
Okay, then we are adjourned.
All right. Thank you. Nice job.
Recording stopped.